Welcome to the 2023 Bleach Bros Podcast Super Bowl Preview Special, hosted by B-Word and Jake the Hater.
Welcome to the Bleach Brothers Podcast 2023 Super Bowl Preview Show. This is B-Word, and as usual, I am here with my good buddy Jake. Jake, how are you doing tonight?
I'm freaking amazing. I'm like Pat Mahomes' foot last game, powering through life. Fucking phenomenal. You cannot stop me. You cannot stop me, just like my picks tonight. I know who's going to win. Alternate spread line. It doesn't matter. It's going to be a fucking stellar game, dude. I hate both teams in it. I hate everybody there. Okay, let me ask you this, B-Word. Which story are you going to get more tired of before the game? The Kelsey brothers in the game, Andy Reid against his former team, or anything to deal with the Mahomes family?
I want to do Andy Reid versus Andy Reid's old team. Not that I'm going to get tired of that one. That one's actually my favorite one, so I think I answered your question wrong there. But it's hamburgers versus old hamburgers, right? I think that Andy Reid is a phenomenal coach. He obviously comes from the Philadelphia transplant. I think that'll be good. But let's talk about Mahomes' family. I just do not like anything to do with Mahomes' family.
I hate all of them. I hate his dad. I hate his wife. I hate his sister. I hate his brother. I hate everything. I do. They're like a shitty neighbor that just has things that just everything bothers you. Like their dog might be cool, but it barks and you hate their fucking dog. Like they have a trampoline, you have a trampoline. You can see it over your fence, you fucking hate it, right? It's like those people that you meet with a punchable face.
Yep.
Like it's just, I don't know what it is. Yeah.
And speaking of a punchable face, you and I both coming from the NFC East, we are cursed with having to watch the Philadelphia Eagles potentially and realistically having a shot at the Super Bowl trophy. So we're going to bring you complete comprehensive coverage in this episode. We've got our friend Travis Demers coming at you. He's going to talk about announcing the big game. Jake, we've also got a friend of yours from Atlanta coming on. You want to talk about him real quick?
Yeah, Andy Bunker, Bunky Pants, baby. For all the Motod Mafia out there and all the old fans of Rip City Mornings, Andy Bunker was one of the people who first tried to help me up here get in the scene. And he moved to Atlanta for his little family. He's doing great down there. He's on the game down there. But he's going to come on and help us out. We also have another old friend of yours coming on, back again, Tommy Thomson.
Tommy Thomson is coming to us from the ESPN radio station in Reno, Nevada, 94.5, covering all things Nevada sports. But Tommy Thomson is a co-host of the Kenny B's sports betting program there. We're excited to have him back on, even though, he's a Niners fan.
Yeah, but speaking of betting, we also have Josh from Appleboys. Hooray for that guy. He's going to come in and talk some fantasy with us.
Another degenerate.
He's in that. He's another degenerate like me. He's in that line where he's throwing it down. Like I've come to terms. We know I'm a Cards fan. We know I defected. However, I'm more of who's on the money line. Like that's my lifestyle now. My lifestyle is who's on the money line. Josh agrees with me. He feels for me. He's in our Discord, like the Patreon people, in the scoreboard zone, talking shit with me all the fucking time. And another good buddy of both of ours now, because he called it out on the last episode,
J-Rob.
J-Rob from the Cover O podcast.
Cover Zero podcast.
Nope, can't change my mind. He's coming on, and I think that'll be a very, very well done in-depth breakdown analysis. And we might have a few other surprises as well.
J-Rob's got us taken care of on the X's and O's. We're excited to have him as well. But yeah, probably a couple other surprises coming at this episode. So why don't we take a break real quick, and we'll come back with Travis Demers.
Welcome back to the show. Let's join B-Word and Jake as they're now joined by radio voice of the Portland Trailblazers, Travis Demers.
And welcome back to our first segment of this Super Bowl preview show. Jake, we are here with Travis. Travis, welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, I'm good. I'm in a hotel room in Memphis, and it's freezing cold outside with sleet. And I didn't know that it snowed and got this cold in Memphis. And also as a precaution, because there's a lot of stuff going on here in Memphis. If you haven't watched the news lately, we've been advised to just kind of lay low while we're here. And, not that it's the worst conditions in the world to be in, one of the nicest hotels in Memphis, but, it's just like you just feel a little trapped.
Are you a big fan of that city?
It sure is Memphis.
I was hoping you'd say it like that.
Beale Street is really cool, right? And there is some fantastic food. And the first time that I came here, like, I don't want to bring politics or anything like that into it at all, but I grew up in like one of the whitest places in America, right, in Westchester County, New York, and we had like very, very little diversity. Where I went to college, I think it was like 45% Caucasian, so I learned how to adapt a little bit there, and it was one of the best things I ever did. But you come to Memphis and you get a sense of history in a totally different way. And like things that you read in textbooks and things that you hear about, the civil rights movement and things like that. It's like just being in this city, you can feel it, even though you'll never really be able to feel it or understand, you can feel it. And to me, like, that's one of the cooler things about visiting different places is like the historical context of some of these places and things that you might not be able to see in other areas. That's like, okay, this is reality.
And that's the beautiful part about sports too, because it is such a melting pot, if you will, of backgrounds, nationalities, races, the whole works. I mean, you have a whole bunch of, it's probably one of the most, it's a microcosm of society in a sense where it is diverse enough where you have all these different points of view and all these different backgrounds. In your profession, how do you really kind of see that work within the team?
Yeah, I think what you have to do is just be yourself, right? Because if you try and relate to somebody else in a way that you think they want you to relate to them in, then you come off just weird, man. And nobody wants to be that, right? So like you come off, disingenuous and just be yourself. And I think people respect that. Like, I'm not going to try and relate to a 20-year-old NBA player who's into hip hop culture and try and get on his level with that stuff when I'm a 41-year-old, broadcaster who likes heavy metal. Like there are just some things that we aren't going to, we're not going to have in common, right? I mean, there are literally some players on the team that are closer in age to my 2- and 4-year-old sons than they are to my age, right? And that also makes me feel very old. So, that's one thing that I've learned is just be yourself, right? I think you can relate to people more by being yourself than you can by trying to be who you think they think you should be.
Well, obviously you're on the road. You just told us, but you've been in this industry a while.
Yeah.
And you've done it where you've been in a local house, if I'm correct, and you've just announced there, and now you're doing it where you're traveling around the country.
Yep.
Is the preparation different based on like, you're getting ready to travel and stuff, or do you still do it the same way regardless if you had to stay home all the time and prepare versus when you're on the road?
Yeah, I mean, my charts look the same either way, and Jake, you've seen them. They're stupid detailed, and one of the reasons for that is because I'm very OCD when it comes to my notes, and like I like to know where everything is and where this specific stat is, and it's the same color for every player, and I know like, okay, if I'm looking for their career high against the opponent, I know that it's going to be in red and it's going to be right there for every player. Sometimes we have stats people who will like pass you notes and things like that. Sometimes we don't. It's a crapshoot. So I try and go in prepared with all that stuff, for both teams, for all the players, what's going on in the league that night. And maybe it's overkill. I don't know, but it's what works for me. And whether we're home or on the road, I do it the same way. Sometimes, even though we've been to some of these arenas a lot of times, you're not always going to have the same setup. You're not always going to have the same space, the same things available. So I just try and make sure that the one thing that I can control is the information that I prepare. And I probably go a little overboard with it, but it's what makes me feel comfortable.
I wouldn't say it's overboard. I remember one of my favorite stories was when me and you used to have a tradition when we had time back in the day where we'd watch the Army-Navy game together.
Yeah.
And there was one year we went to a little pub around the corner from your house at the time. And then we went back to your place and had a few more libations, but it was cool because you pulled out all your notes and you were prepping for games right there live after we just watched the game. And I was like, are we playing D&D or what the fuck? This is a lot of information right now. Are you going to pull the dice out?
Yeah, I got it right here if you want to see it, because I got this giant ass notebook here, and it's got every game from the season. And the 3-ring binder part came apart because there are too many damn pages in here. But this is from the last game we just played against Atlanta. And it's got a lot of information. I stepped it up this year because I found the the fonts that the teams use for the numbers and the official team colors and crap. So I've got all that. So yeah, and again, like I know it's stupid. Like people think I'm an idiot, but it's because it's just for my eyes. Nobody's going to see it.
But Travis, you're speaking my language when it comes to that kind of organization, man. Like I appreciate that a lot. Even Jake will even tell you, even when we're doing rundowns with guests or just us, like I will decorate and I will create a rundown that kind of has the theme and everything in it. So completely, you're speaking my language. But so we have a big game coming up. We've got the Philadelphia Eagles and we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. And there's a lot of talk about, all aspects of this game. But what we really kind of want to talk with you about a little bit is your expertise. You are the radio voice for the Portland Trailblazers. You call the games for the team. So there's been a shakeup with the announcer teams with the NFL. From somebody who is so close to a sports team right now, how do you look at that? Like, do you just kind of look at, okay, well, they're just pairing different people, or do you look at like the chemistry, the buildup around that? Like for somebody who's in a similar industry, talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, like chemistry is so important, right? It means everything because you can have broadcasters that are stepping on each other's toes, and with TV, it's a little different because there's a design space in there, right? You don't have to be talking at all time. I think it's a little harder with radio, but chemistry, I mean, it really is important, but there's also a huge difference between being the local teams, either homer or quasi-homer broadcasters, and being, a national broadcaster that's covering a different team every week. And you're getting fans from both teams watching you because you have the only broadcaster listening to you because you have the only broadcast. So like, you have to make sure that you're impartial. How many times have you watched a game and you didn't know who the announcers were? Maybe it was a college game and you didn't know who was there and you're like, God, why is this guy rooting for the other team? Like, this is stupid. Why is he being paid by the other team? Why is he all over this one dude? Like, it's really hard sometimes not to do that because the best of the best in the pro game, they are detailed. They talk with the coaches. They talk with the players. They know the league inside and out. Sometimes, though, especially let's just say if you're watching an NCAA tournament game, when one broadcaster has 8 teams to prepare for in one weekend, and maybe they get the notes like the day of or the day before, and it's like, Texas directional, A&M, whatever. And now you're supposed to know everything and anything about these players. You can only do so much prep. So you kind of latch on to something, right? And that happens. And that's happened to me when because I would do the old high school tournament back in the day. And, I had every team that was, all 8 teams that were there. And, in the first round, it's like, I don't know who any of these players are. I don't know how to say their names. You don't get the same kind of information doing that you do in other sports. So there's definitely a challenge there for sure. But again, when you're talking about the NFL and the Super Bowl, it's not like, Greg Olsen and Kevin Burkhardt don't know who these guys are. It's not like they haven't called their games. They just called the NFC Championship game. There's a reason why they are where they are. But when you think about that chemistry and you see pairings that have worked together for so long, like Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth did, or when we were growing up, Pat Summerall and John Madden. Like those, the chemistry was there, man. Those were the voices of football, and you'd get a Greg Gumbel or a Dick Enberg or Joel Myers, some of those guys who called a lot of those games, and they worked with the same people over and over. That's why, like when you watch college football, it's always the same teams that work together, the same play-by-play and analyst and sideline reporter and things like that, because you have to build that chemistry. Sure, people could slide in and out all the time. It's just not going to have that same vibe. So for like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, they've been doing games forever. Whether you like them or not, I do like them. You can't deny that they work really well together. And that is such an important part of it. I know a lot of people are really high on the job that Greg Olsen has done, being so new at it. And when Tony Romo was new right away, he was great at it. Well, obviously knowledge of the sport, you have to put in the work and you have to have a good personality. Like if you don't have all of those things as a national broadcaster, you're not going to cut it.
Well, those are good points you're bringing up in the sense like when you're talking about a small market, when they're working March Madness, that's where a color commentator comes into play a lot heavier. than the guy with the analytics side. Chemistry is very important. I mean, that's how our show has taken off. If me and B-Word didn't get along or it didn't work, what would be the damn point? But the other thing you have to look at is there's a lot, like you were saying, there's a lot of people out there that are broadcasting now that people just don't like. And I know you're in the industry, and it's you might not want to bring up, certain people in case you ever cross their paths or anything. But are there any announcers in NFL right now that you're like, I just can't stand the way that guy calls games, and why?
No, I don't think so. Because like the TV broadcasts, and I watch a lot of Red Zone, so I'm not sitting there watching like a whole broadcast and picking apart things. As a Giants fan, I loved Phil Simms, and I really didn't care if he was any good at what he did because I loved Phil Simms. And there are people who feel that way about their players and the guys they grew up watching and things like that. And I thought he was a good broadcaster. But I think Tony Romo is also really good. There's nobody that I watch like, oh my God, not this guy, not in the NFL. There are definitely some in college that I'm not particular to, but in the NFL, no, I don't think there are any, because most of them have been around for a long time, and most of them have been broadcasting for a long time. So whether you have it's not the old crews anymore. You have some new guys in there. Obviously, Ian Eagle is one of my favorites. He's the guy that I grew up listening to. But Kevin Harlan on radio, or Burkhardt, Joe Buck, Mike Tirico. They're all really good, right? So I know some fans want to pick apart. Oh, I can't believe he just said that. Well, I'd hate to see what people would have to say about me if more people were listening to what I do. And it's always a vocal minority that's always speaking up anyway. So you have to consider that.
Yeah, well, and there is a point you were making, though, too, is that, it takes the good chemistry in the sense, like, do you feel, because we're seeing this more and more, not that this has never existed, but I think it's more prominent now, players that have had a knowledge of the game have stepped out of the game, and, instead of just retirement, they're becoming experts and talking and having a good personality and being up there and saying things and bringing out points that we might not have seen. I think, like, when Aikman first came on the scene, I thought he was great because he would point out things about the game that I'm like, I didn't think of that before. Like, I would just think X's and O's. John Madden's going to say something about a guy with hands catching a ball because you need hands to catch a ball, and then he'd be reeled back in. Do you feel, though, that there are too many players getting involved in the announcer's booth? Because you're a broadcaster, you're in the announcer's booth. Yeah. Do you feel like it's becoming saturated on that other end? No, because you don't have a lot of former players that are play-by-play guys. Right. There are very few former players that can be play-by-play guys. Pat Summerall did it. Bob Greasy did it. Dan Fouts did it. But there aren't many of those guys that can go from being a former player to doing play-by-play. On the other side of that, there aren't a lot of people who can go from never having played that sport at a level higher than high school that are broadcasters that can be analysts. It can happen, but I think that analyst chair is always going to be reserved for someone who's a former player because they have more intimate knowledge than anybody who didn't play that sport. They know what practices are like. They know what preparation is like. They know what games are like. They know how to break things down. So I don't think so. I think when you're looking at like the studio shows, where I see it getting oversaturated is when you have like 5 or 6 people on set. And you've got like 9 seconds for each person to talk, and they're all talking over each other. To me, that's where it gets oversaturated, right? Like, and I'm not saying it should have fewer players because players are bad broadcasters. I think that the number of people talking is where it's like, whoa, settle down here. Let me just look at one person or hear 2 people. You're going to get a better conversation that way. But you have the bigger names. People want to see that. Networks are spending a boatload of money on that stuff. I get it. That's where I think it's getting oversaturated.
So we talked about when Aikman first got in the game and when Romo first got in the game, that it brought a breath of fresh air to, the color commentator piece of it. Greg Olson's done a great job over the last few years of really trying to pick this up and mastering it. And he's done a really good job at doing that. However, this is going to be his first time announcing the big game. How essential is that 2-week break, or that, a little bit more than a week break to try to prepare for this game for somebody who, number one, has done it and has done a good job, but is now going to be that one game that everybody's going to focus on?
Yeah. I think it can be a blessing and a curse, right? Because when you're in that chair for the Super Bowl, And there are going to be a lot of people listening to you, but then there are also going to be a lot of people who aren't listening to you because they're at their Super Bowl parties or at a bar and they're not paying attention to what the broadcasters are saying. But you're going to be under a bigger microscope. So this gives Greg Olsen an opportunity to really look at film, right? And break down the season of film. So let's say, the Chiefs target X corner for the Eagles and he makes a great read on a play. Now he's got 2 weeks to dive into the film and say, okay, well, this play is something that he did in week 4 against X because he has this footwork and this and that, and really dive into like the uber specific stuff, right? Now, he can certainly watch a game without any preparation at all and diagnose what's happening on the field and tell you what's situationally this or that. But for the Super Bowl to have that extra time to really dive into it, that's a totally – it's a bigger advantage for him to have the opportunity to really know all of these teams inside and out, tendencies from both teams, play calling, what they've done in certain situations, all that kind of stuff. The place where it becomes a curse is that how much pressure is he going to put on himself because he's never been in this spot before, right? Now,
sure.
For athletes, some of them are just naturally gifted, right? Tony Romo is a naturally gifted speaker. That's what he does. I'm not at all. Like, I was shy. Like, it took me years and years just to be comfortable enough to do what I do. And it took a long time for me to go over that because that's just not me. That is Tony Romo. I don't think that's Greg Olsen. He's a good speaker and he's good on camera, but I don't see that same type of charisma. It's not a knock on him. That's just what his personality is. He's played in a Super Bowl. He's been on that stage before in an area where he's comfortable in. As a player, as a tight end with the Panthers in Super Bowl 50, my question or my concern, because I don't know the answer to this, and I'm just spitballing, is how comfortable is he in that role, only doing a season plus worth of games to not let the moment be big. Now, you don't get to that position in life as a football player, letting the moment get too big for you, so I'm sure he's going to be just fine. But I promise you, it's going to be in the back of the head like, oh, my God, I'm broadcasting the Super Bowl right now.
Right. Well, good point. I mean, if you could put yourself in his shoes, I'll give you a two-parter here, Demers. One, if you could call any big game, which game would it be? And then two, on side note of that, how would you be if the Blazers made it this year and you're announcing for that for the first time in a championship? I mean, what would your feelings be?
So my first year doing this, I was the fill-in guy, right? And I didn't, quote, have the job. I was filling in for Brian Wheeler, who was dealing with a lot of health issues. And he couldn't continue after the Oklahoma City series. So I get a call from our director of broadcasting saying, okay, you're back in. We need you in Denver for game 1 of the second round. And I had done, 41 NBA games in my life. And I've done, plenty of other games, but it's different. It's the NBA. And then it's the NBA playoffs. And game 1 and 2 in Denver, we're on the floor and we're not usually there. So that, it felt big. Then we get back home and the first game back is a 4 overtime thriller, right? And that game was totally different. We ended up going back to Denver, and now here I am calling game 7 of an NBA playoff series. We win that, and then we go in the Western Conference Finals. So this is my first year doing NBA games. I'm not even officially the broadcaster. I'm the fill-in guy. I'm the backup guy. And I'm calling the Western Conference Finals, in Oakland against the Warriors. Like, that gets to you a little bit. And you're like, I really cannot screw this up. Because if you do, like, it was the biggest moment of my broadcasting career. Every game going forward was the biggest moment of my broadcasting career. And for me, still pretty damn new in that spot, it was like, man, like I was wide-eyed. I felt like a kid at some points. I was nervous. I had the butterflies. But then once the game gets going, you get right into the flow and you get back to what got you in that spot. So,
right.
For a big game for me, I've kind of been in that spot and really just thrown into the fire. So I think if we were to get there now, yes, I would have it on my mind. But this is the NBA Finals. The Blazers haven't been there in 30 years, haven't won a championship since 77. This is a huge moment, and my voice gets to be on the call. I would absolutely be thinking about that stuff. But I don't think it would affect me the same way that it did my, that kind of rookie year, right? I didn't have the service time yet. And if I were to broadcast one big event, I'll take the Blazers and a Blazers championship out of it, right? Because that's obviously who I work for. I think it would be Game 7 of a World Series. That's what I would want to call it, because you're hanging on every single pitch. The game could change on every single pitch. It's long, it's drawn out. You've got a lot of time in between pitches. The games can be 3.5, 4 hours. But that's, to me, where the drama is. That would be the game I would want to call.
Is there a difference of, and I'm sure there is, because we've all heard when an announcer yells goal for soccer, but is there a difference for you announcing different sports? Like, does basketball have a different energy than football and baseball? I mean, you're saying hanging onto a pitch, but I mean, does it take a certain like oomph that you have to give for basketball compared if you did football?
Yeah, it does. And I haven't done football in years. The highest level of football I've ever done is college, Division II college. And I haven't done that in a long time. I haven't done high school football in 6-7 years. So it's almost like I forget. And there's a different level. I used to do University of Portland games. There's a different level of energy there than there is calling NBA games. And I've done minor league baseball. I've done college baseball. I'd love to do some MLB sometime, but just the flow of it, right? You know, in the NBA, you can get a hammer dunk in the first minute of a game, and that's a big play. But you also don't call that the same way you're going to call it in the last minute of a game or in a playoff game where there's that added intensity. But you have to have some energy, right? And some people, have said, "Wow, man, this guy makes in the first quarter he's acting like it's Game 7 of the finals." Oh, okay, that's my style. I have a lot of energy. I like to make every play sound big, but I can still take it to that next level when it really needs it. So there's absolutely, a different level. You're not going to call a 2nd and 10 quarterback draw that goes for 2 yards the same way that you're going to call a 40-yard touchdown down the sidelines. Obviously there is a little bit there's a difference there in the energy you put into that for sure.
So real quick prediction from you, Travis. So we don't know what Tom Brady's going to do. Whether he's going to retire, whether he's going to come back, whether he's going to play for the Niners, whether he's going to play for the Raiders, we have no clue. But what we do know is that he has a pretty substantial contract with Fox to become one of their voices for their brand. What is your prediction with Tom Brady? What does your gut tell you that he is going to do after the Super Bowl as we get into free agency period, the draft, et cetera? What decision do you think that Tom's going to make?
Well, let me ask you this. Can you picture Tom Brady when his career is over becoming a recluse or somebody that you don't hear anything from? I can't at all. Like, that dude is going to be out front somewhere, wherever it is. And if that means he's going to make $350 million as a broadcaster, then so be it. Like there are some guys that you just never hear from again. Right. And then there are other guys like Terry Bradshaw that you just can't get rid of, and they stay around forever. And I love Terry Bradshaw. I'm saying that in an endearing way. But, there are other players like Joe Montana. What have we heard from Joe Montana in the last 30 years? Very little. He's done a couple Skechers commercials. But outside of that, like, what else has Joe Montana done? Not a whole lot. Peyton Manning's all over the place. That's great. I love Peyton Manning. He does the ESPN, the Manning cast. He's a perfect role for him there. Tom Brady doesn't have the Peyton Manning personality, but he's also not somebody that's going to just fade into oblivion and we're never going to hear from him again. And other than the records, and he becomes a ghost. He's not going to be that guy. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think he's going to end up in broadcasting at some point. I mean, how do you turn down even that dude who has more money than you could imagine? How does anybody turn down $350 million to talk about football?
Well, I think it's valued a little bit more after an FTX scandal.
Oh man, yeah, I'm glad I have not gone down the road of the cryptocurrencies.
Do you think Brady's going to be good though? Because that's my big concern. Is I see Manning and it's like there's personality, there's that. I think Brady will have knowledge, but I don't know. And it's not. I actually like Brady. I'm not a hater of him, but I just can't picture him going through a whole game with me, if that makes sense. And it's hard for me to imagine. So it's like how they say Saban should be an announcer, and I'm like, hell no, I don't see it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be wrong, and I hope I am. I want him to be successful, but do you think he'd be good at it?
Within the confines of a football game, have you ever seen Tom Brady not look like he's having a terrible time or not look like a total asshole, right? That's what got him where he was. That's what put him in this spot, because nothing is ever good enough for that guy, right? It's that same Michael Jordan mentality that, nothing is ever good enough and you're just kind of a dick. And that's who Tom Brady is as a football player. And it's what's led to all of his success. And Michael Jordan's the same way. So from afar, him watching two other teams play that he's not invested in, that he is supposed to be impartial, like, where's the emotion going to come from him? Because he's a fiery dude, right? And he shows emotion on the field. Where's that emotion going to come from him? And and I don't mean emotion like, getting so frustrated with a bad call like we saw LeBron do, a few nights ago. I'm not talking about that kind of emotion. I'm just saying, like, I've never heard him speak with passion. When he speaks, it's very calculated and it's very smart. And he obviously knows what he's doing and he knows what he's talking about. But can that passion come out of him when he's talking about football in a way that can relate to people watching? I don't know.
I know I'd like to see a Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski duo. And Tom Brady can be the number one, Rob can be the number two. I just think that you can have your own little Manning cast kind of thing with that. I think that would be pretty funny. You can call it the LFG cast or whatever you want to do. I think that would be kind of cool. But
I would rather have just like, a security camera watching them watch a game without them knowing anybody's watching them watch a game. That's what I want to see in those two guys. I want to know what their real conversations are like.
That'd be awesome. So, Travis, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, it's the Section 113 podcast. We call it Section 113 because our broadcast location for home games is in Section 113. So if you ever come to a Trailblazers game, come up there and say hello. It's essentially a game preview. We do it most game days. And it's 15 minutes long, 15, 20 in that ballpark. It's quick, get you ready for the game. We'll either talk with, I say we, but it's me. So I'm not giving anybody else credit for this. I'll talk with one of our coaches or players, one of our broadcasters, an opposing team's broadcaster. Sometimes we'll get the visiting team's perspective. Sometimes we'll just kind of dive in and talk about what's going on with the Trailblazers. But it's getting you ready for whatever game is coming up next. You can find it pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts, or just go to trailblazers.com and you can find it there.
So, Travis, to end this segment, let's get your pick for the Super Bowl. Who's taking it, and what's the score?
Yeah, so I think everybody knows that I hate the Eagles. I posted on Twitter during the NFC Championship game that my pick for the game was, I don't care whoever wins in the AFC is who I'm going to root for. And my pick for the AFC Championship game was, I don't care, just go beat the Eagles. So I will be rooting for the Chiefs. I think they're going to win. I think it's going to be a tight game. You look at what the Eagles defense has done in the playoffs. They faced a Giants team that, let's face it, the Giants still aren't very good, gave up 7 points. And then the Niners, who, without their quarterback, you're talking about 14 points over 2 NFL playoff games. They played a fairly weak schedule. I'm not saying they're not deserving. They absolutely are deserving of being there. But I think we've got this false idea of what their defense is. I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Chiefs enough. And I think the Chiefs are going to win, let's just say 27-20.
All right, Travis, we'll bring you back for our final segment. But with that, we're going to go to break.
Welcome back to the show. Let's join B-Word and Jake as they are now joined by host of the Appleboys Podcast and fellow degenerate, Josh.
Josh, welcome back to the show. How you been, bud?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Welcome to the very first time on the Super Bowl's preview show for us. We have you coming on to kind of talk about your quote-unquote degenerateness. You seem to be pretty active, not only on the betting side of things, but also in the fantasy football side of things. And if I'm wrong here, let me know, but you kind of had some recognition from fantasy football this year, correct?
Yeah, this was the first year since 2015 that I've been to a live final with DraftKings or FanDuel. So I went to the Fantasy Football World Championship this year in New Orleans and competed for a pretty big top prize.
Fantastic. So getting us prepared for the big game, what are some things that you're kind of looking at, whether it be with FanDuel or anything like that, or just with fantasy in general?
When it comes to daily fantasy sports, the approach is a little bit different than it is to just straight sports betting, because there are things like player salaries and defense versus specific positions and hot streaks and things like that. And I'll admit that I'm much, much better at playing fantasy when there are multiple games involved so that I can pick the best plays from each game. I feel like in single game, there's definitely an edge, but you have to get super creative with a lineup and hope that it goes the way you think it'll go. So I think with a single game like the Super Bowl, the best thing to do is build out a script in your head, which is appropriate based on everything that's been coming out with Arian Foster and talking about the NFL being scripted. But like, think about how the game might go and try to think about a way that it would go differently than most people might expect, right? So if you just were to pick the best players in the game, everybody's going to want to have Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, right? So most lineups are going to have Jalen Hurts, and most lineups are going to have Patrick Mahomes. You never want to think about somebody getting injured, and Patrick Mahomes has shown that he's tough, right?
Yeah.
But what happens if he aggravates that ankle injury early in the first quarter, goes down, and can't tough it out, right? So if you open up a fantasy lineup with the backup quarterback from Kansas City, there's a reasonable path to him playing the majority of the game. And they have an explosive offense either way. It's maybe not exactly the same as it used to be, but that type of lineup construction gets you different than most of the field. So if you're trying to win a contest against a huge number of other people, something like that is the kind of thing that you got to think about. Or if you pick the kick returner for a team and you pick the corresponding defense, you get points if that player gets a touchdown for both the defensive special teams touchdown and the individual player. So if he runs one back and then also catches a long bomb and then there's a pick six or something like that, then you're getting correlated scores. And you know, only one thing has to happen for two things to be beneficial. So that's another thing. And then getting weird with the lineup construction. So on a single game, you've only got 6 slots to fill. So maybe you are going to play both quarterbacks, but maybe you're going to fade all the top running backs and all the top wide receivers and play 4 tight ends. So how many lineups do you think are going to see with not just Travis Kelce and Dallas Goedert, but also Noah Gray and Jack Stoll or whoever the backup tight end is for Philadelphia? So just getting weird with the lineups is the way to get different. And, you know, that's the strategy to use when you're trying to take down the big tournaments that have the $1 million top prize, things like that. There are a lot of other types of contests. You know, there's some contests where you just have to be in the top half of the contest and everybody that's in the top half makes the same amount of money. And if you're in the bottom half, you don't make any money. Strategy is completely different in that because you're trying to play a safer lineup that's more likely to get points. So you're going to get a lot more similar lineups that are winning lineups in that type of contest because you're not trying to get first place. You're just trying to be in the best half. So you're playing much safer plays there.
Well, you brought up a point that, you know, this is a single game versus like usually when daily fantasy and it is prominent in my opinion, you know, for a novice is there's every team's playing. So you have a lot more people to choose from. When you're saying getting clever with a lineup, does that mean you don't have to have a quarterback or do you have to have the standard players, like a standard lineup to go into it?
So in single game, you don't, there are no position requirements. You just have to stay within the salary cap. So you could play 2 kickers, 2 tight ends, and 2 defenses, and that works fine. And that's the reason why single game contests can exist, because if you had to have a quarterback and 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers, you'd have so many duplicated lineups that people would just tie every time. So it is different than when you have 2 or more games on the slate.
I got you. So like I know you explained some of the strategy, but for people like me or B word trying to get into this, you think for this game, would the appropriate strategy to be not just go for the biggest players, it'd be just to go for almost like go for gusto, like go for that one offshoot, like crazy one that you just think is going to get the points that day, or still stick with the standards and maybe only have maybe one or two little offshoots?
It depends on the type of, like, contest selection is probably the most important part of being a successful daily fantasy sports player. So the people who do this as a career, most of them that are successful long-term are grinders. You know, it's the same thing as grinding poker, where you're not trying to always get that big hit. You're just trying to be successful like 58% of the time or whatever it is to beat the rake. And for that, there are edges in certain contests where you pick head-to-heads against newer players, and you pick contests where you have a higher likelihood of being above the cash line, and you're just trying to get, you know, if you have a $5 entry, you're trying to win $9 or whatever the case may be, more often than not. I am not a professional player. Part of that is, you know, I have kids and a family and things, and I just I can't dedicate the time to it away from work and things like that. I also don't think I have the patience to just be a grinder like that. I like the thrill of the big game hunt. So I want to win the $100,000 prizes and the $1 million prizes and things like that. And so I think the answer to your question really depends on the type of contest you choose. But if you choose one of those big, like there are 500,000 people in the contest, you're not going to win the contest picking the people that everybody wants to play. You're going to have to take a stand on something. You're going to have to get weird. And you're going to have to hope that whatever narrative you built out in your head plays out on the field. So I think that almost anything can happen. And I believe that some of my best fantasy scores have come when I've seen a snippet of something or heard something on a talk show or seen something on ESPN or read an article, and it just kind of stuck with me. And it's just this conviction that I have. I'll never forget. I finished in the top 20 in a Millie Maker a few years ago, and had a real shot to win it. And the reason for that was the night before. Do you guys remember Torrey Smith from the Baltimore Ravens?
Oh, yeah,
He was a wide receiver. So the night before, his brother had been killed, and he announced that he was still going to play in the game on Sunday. And I just had this feeling that, like, he's going to go out there and have the game of his life for his brother. And he did. You know, he went out there and scored 3 touchdowns and had, you know, a ton of yards. And he wasn't on anybody's radar before the news, and not many people pay attention to that type of thing. And so I had him in, you know, I may have entered 40 lineups that day, and I had him in probably 30 of those 40 lineups. So him as a low-owned player automatically put me ahead of a large amount of the field. So I just had to get the rest of the pieces right, and I almost got enough of those pieces right to take down the big prize. And so every time I've had any sort of big win, it's been not just being different for the sake of being different, but being different in a way where the reason you're being different could play out in real life. And, you know, it doesn't always happen that way, but it's fun when it does.
So, Josh, we're about a week away from the big game, and so I don't think right now is a good time to just start setting your lineups. But if you were to just kind of walk us through this, what would a lineup for this big game look like?
I don't start building lineups this early because there's too much news involved, and there's, you know, one of the things that is the worst thing you can do as a daily fantasy player, or really fantasy sports in general, is the time right before the game's about to start or the slate's about to start, and you start tinkering with the lineups, right? So you've done all this research throughout the week, and you've put together this lineup that you think is the right lineup, and then you start tinkering with it, and you're like, oh, but what if this happened? And whenever it happens that way, like you you screw up your lineup, you do all the things the wrong way, and it just doesn't work out. And so whenever I build a lineup for the Super Bowl, I'm going to, as we get closer, take a look at what ownership projection is going to look like. So, like I said, I think that Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts are probably going to be on 80% of lineups, if I were guessing, because like they're just the most likely people to score the most points in the game. And that's true. Like 95 times out of 100, they're going to be in the top scorers, right? But because of that, they also have the highest salary. So they take up the largest amount of your cap space that you can use to build your lineup. And it limits what you can do in other positions. So another thing that you might do is, how do you think the game's going to play out, right? So if you think that Kansas City is going to blow out Philadelphia, you can't have all 6 spots taken up from one team. So you have to have at least one spot represented from the opposite team. But you could have a 5-to-1. That's what we call an onslaught build, right? So you pick 5 Kansas City players or 5 Philadelphia players, put it with one of the opposite team, and you just figure they're going to blow them out. These guys are all going to score, and just go from there. But my thought is that Philadelphia is a good team, but I think they're fraudulent. I've thought that all year. I think they've had the most favorable schedule possible but including in the playoffs, to get to the Super Bowl. And I think that even with a slightly gimpy Patrick Mahomes and a potentially still a little bit injured Travis Kelce and things like that, and a wide receiver core that's not as good as it's been in previous years, I still think they're the much better team. And so I will probably build my lineups assuming that Kansas City wins the game handily. And I think that I will probably build lineups that, I think that if I put Travis Kelce on a team, I'm going to also have Noah Gray. Like, I think I'm going to have both tight ends and assume they both score touchdowns, and maybe fade. Like, everybody's going to want to play MVS because he had the big game last week. And so everybody has this recency bias, but he's been shit all year. He had his one blow-up game. I don't think he's going to do that back-to-back. So, I might do like Patrick Mahomes, Jerick McKinnon, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, Harrison Butker, and then play like Dallas Goedert or, I think with Philadelphia, one thing that's interesting is Miles Sanders is obviously their RB1. And Kenny G's been getting a lot of playing time over the last couple games, but really leading up to the last couple games, Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott were almost even for the backup duties. And Boston Scott is going to be much, much lower owned and also will be cheaper. So he's going to cost less salary. So that may be a way that I get different, is I use the quote unquote third string running back from Philadelphia, who was 2 weeks ago even for the second string running back, and hope he just either snakes a couple touchdowns on the 1 yard line or breaks off a big one or something like that, just something different.
Right. So, I mean, you were going into a single game, the Super Bowl. It sounds to me, the way you're describing it, that you're picking a team to win. And to me, it seems like when you're playing daily fantasy, typically you don't care about if the teams win or lose. But when you come down to a single team versus single team, and you have, you're picking third string people and stuff, you're going in with a bias essentially that you would take the money line for the Chiefs. Am I wrong there? Because you need them to perform. So it's almost like betting the game straight up, just with players as well. Am I wrong there?
You're not wrong, but again, the strategy is predicated on being different than the 500,000 other people that are playing this lineup. So you have to get a little bit weirder than you would if you were just, if you're betting the money line, you just need your team to win or lose, right? And if I were going to bet the money line, I think Kansas City is going to win this game. So I would bet the Kansas City side of things, but I don't know that I feel like they're going to blow them out. I feel like they'll win convincingly, but blowouts in the NFL are rare anyway, and they're especially rare in a game like the Super Bowl. Everybody's going to come completely ready to play. Nick Sirianni's a terrific coach. He's going to have his team ready to go. I think that the example that I gave is probably my initial thought on how I would build a large field tournament lineup for daily fantasy on a single game slate, but it doesn't necessarily indicate how I would bet the game. Because I think with straight betting, you need to look at like what are the odds and where is the best value in the odds. And honestly, I've been playing fantasy sports since '97 when we did it with the newspaper and calculated the scores manually. And I've been playing daily fantasy sports since like 2010 or 2011. But I really don't do much straight sports betting. I don't feel like I have the edge with sports betting. With DFS, I have a projection model that I've built where like each week I update the stats from the previous week, and my projections are different than the projections that anybody else pays for out there. And so I feel like I have a good starting point for how I think the players are going to do based on the model that I built. And that helps inform the decisions that I make. And I just don't have those same tools. I haven't invested that kind of time in the sports betting side. So I don't feel the same conviction. I think if I were betting the game, I think I would use a different set of parameters than I would if I were building a fantasy team.
So that kind of brings us to this. So you've kind of hinted at this. You think, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win this game. Kind of give me a justification for that and throw me a score.
I think Philadelphia's defense has looked incredible, especially the defensive line. They've had a ton of sacks all year, but I've watched a lot of football this year, and the Eagles have been on the TV a lot because they've been winning. And it feels like every week they're playing against a team that's either terrible or injured or they have some sort of built-in advantage. It's just felt like the stars have been aligned for them all year. And meanwhile, I feel like Kansas City has been like scratching and clawing against the best competition all year long, and they've been winning games that they on paper shouldn't have been winning. There have been several times where I've picked against Kansas City this year because it looked like there was no chance they were going to win, and they took care of business. And I think that Patrick Mahomes is the X factor. I think that he's going to be the difference maker in the game. I think Philadelphia is a good team, but I think that Kansas City wins the game 31-21.
31-21. All right. Well, with that, Josh, for those of our fans that don't know about you, that haven't heard you on previous episodes, where can they find you? Tell us a little bit about your podcast, and we'll go from there.
So we're the Appleboys Podcast. It's me and three of my buddies, Corey, Rob, and Jimmy. We get together semi-regularly, and we used to get together at Applebee's every Saturday night after work, and Saturdays are for the boys. And so we became the Appleboys and decided to start recording our conversations and publishing them for everybody. So it's just like a night out at the bar with the boys. We talk about whatever. And you can find the Appleboys Podcast wherever you find podcasts. Just search Appleboys Podcast. It's a pretty unique name. We should be the only one that comes up. And our website is appleboys.us.
Well, I definitely encourage our followers to check you guys out. You guys are doing some good stuff. We'll bring you back here in a little bit, but right now, let's go ahead and take a break and go into the next segment.
Welcome back to the show. Let's join B-Word and Jake as they are now joined by co-host of Kenny B's ESPN Sports Handicapping Show on 94.5 FM in Reno, Nevada, Tommy Thomson.
So, Tommy, welcome back to the preview show. We were able to have you on last year Had a blast with you, dude. How you been?
I've been good. Life's been good. I finally got to dry up all my tears from this last round of the playoffs, but it is what it is.
So the 49ers are your team. Man, I was counting on you guys, dude. I just really, really, really wanted the Niners to beat the Eagles, and I'm sure probably no more than you did.
Well, and I mean, coming from a Cowboys fan, that actually gives me all the feels because I know that's tough for you.
Oh, the two teams that let me rephrase this, and we'll talk a little bit about markets in another segment. But the two markets that I hate the most are Bay Area teams, Bay Area fans. You and I've had this conversation separately, and it's not necessarily the fan; it's the fan base and the Philadelphia market. I hate the Philadelphia market. I know Jake does too.
They're the angriest for no reason fuck up fans. Like they're just pissed off all the time, and they boo Santa. They could draft like the greatest player and be like, oh, that fucking guy sucks, fuck him. Like they just don't care. And like there's something about the misery that just, and it's not like Boston misery. It's just like the shithead cousin that got drunk and then fucked his own sister at a party and then punched her in the face, and then everybody wants to throw him out of Thanksgiving dinner type of shithead mentality.
Well, and this is how shitty that fan base is. And I just learned this recently from one of our co-hosts on the Kenny B show, is at the old, is it Veterans Stadium? They had a night court style jail underneath.
Yeah.
Because their fans were so rowdy and shitty that you got arrested, you got arraigned, and you got sentenced at there. And then when they opened up the new stadium, they did away with it. But still, like Jake said, who boos Santa Claus?
Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know. I really don't, because Santa Claus is like my homie. Like I like Santa Claus.
Hail Krampus.
Yeah. Hail Krampus. But like Jake, you are another degenerate here, and we appreciate that.
Yes.
Cause Jake is on, I don't know if Jake's on a roll anymore. I think Jake was losing there for a minute. Did you actually win it back?
I'm halfway back. November, great month for me. October, great month for me. December, decent month. January sucked. January was my sucky month. And the thing was, I was up all month, B-word, and I lost it, pretty much all of it, at the end of the month of like the last 4 days. So I cut some of the losses back. We'll see, because I have a lot of degenerate lines on all the specialty props for the Super Bowl, and I'm excited to talk about them.
So Jake, I'm curious, what platform do you use to wager in your neck of the woods?
So it depends. So like I live down the road from the newest Indian casino, A&A. They just opened up a beautiful sports book. So I'll hit that up every now and then. And I actually like it because they have an app on the phone, so you can build your bet, walk in, they scan the QR code, and everything's ready to go. It's amazing. They also
are you able to bet like from your living room on the phone, or you have to go in and physically?
You have to go in, but you can build everything. You can save the QR code, walk in, and you can have as many tickets as you want built. Walk in, and you can also put the dollar amount on there. So when they scan it, all they do is they just keep scanning your QR codes. You check them, and then you just put the money on the counter, and you're done. So it doesn't take as long.
Nice.
The other nice thing is they have kiosks all over the place, where you can just go in and type in whatever you want, and it has like all the preset stuff, and you can bet right there too. I also use DraftKings, but that's only when I'm on the other side of the border, because it's illegal in Washington. But unless you're in one town, in one casino, which is like 3 hours away from me, you can do most sports betting in Oregon except college. So I'll do a lot of bets on there and use that platform too. So I use both.
Okay. I'm always curious because like we had DraftKings and whatever the other one was here for a while, FanDuel for daily fantasy. And if you picked the right leagues to get into it, you could clean house. Mm-hmm. And then, the casinos got a little hair up their butt and demolished that. So I haven't been able to do it. But the good thing is, not only did they send me all of my winnings that I had in my account, but also my initial deposit.
Nice.
So I was pretty happy for that standpoint. But I always wonder how these out of towners go. I was recently in Tennessee. William Hill, the platform that I use, is legal there, but it still wouldn't verify me, so I couldn't bet while I was in Tennessee.
See, that's the hard thing. And like the other thing is like there's different rules for all of them, right? Like DraftKings will give you better lines usually, I'll see, than the casino down the road, A&A. The other thing is A&A will only let you max out at 9 picks for a parlay. So you can't do anything more than 9 picks ever.
So and William Hill used to do that. Now you can do, I believe you could do more, but you're capped out as your maximum dollar per winning. So you can't win like a 25 team parlay. It's going to pay the same as that 10 team parlay.
Okay. Yeah. Cause like, that's the one thing that people are all on board right now is like with BR betting live and all that with DraftKings, you can do those 25 team, like $1 million crazy parlays, which, you know, and bet 60 cents. And if it hits, you win, which how often that's going to happen? Never. But the other thing I like about those though, in Oregon, you can cash out. And so I've actually made more money cashing out early when you're, and because I don't know if you agree with me on this, Tommy, but I love live betting compared to like actually going in and pre-betting because you can see momentum and you can see how the game's going.
I was just going to touch on that and ask if you're allowed to do that because you're talking about taking it on the shorts and losing your bankroll. Mm-hmm. Thank God for in play because when you're losing, you handicapped it the wrong way. A lot of times you could middle or you could make up for whatever you're losing through in play.
Well, the nice thing is too, though, you can cash out when they're winning. So like I a true degenerate that I am, I love betting on table tennis. The lines move so fast. It's a lot of fun to watch. The games are like 20 minutes. So, and you can have a line go from negative 110 to plus 750 and like back and forth within 5 minutes. And so you can throw money on a guy that you see that just had a bad round, like throw $100 on that to win 750. You see him go up in the next round. They offer you 300 to cash out. You cash out and then he loses anyway. So you would have lost your 100, but instead you cashed out at 300. So see, those awesome. Things are a lot of fun.
And I wish the Nevada books would do that. And B-Word's sitting here laughing because you're betting on table tennis, but this goes to what the intro was of I'm a degenerate like Jake the Hater because during the pandemic, all you had to bet on was Korean baseball and table tennis. And
it's so much fun.
I shit you not. I made so much money betting blindly.
Yes.
On table tennis and
right.
I would go to bed at night, fire up my app, and I'd be like, I like this team, and let's throw an underdog in there. And I'd bet them straight up and I'd do a round robin parlay and I'd wake up like, oh, I got an extra $1,500 in my account. This is awesome. I went 4 for 4. Like, yeah, it's just, we need that action. So I get it.
No. And I like I said, I love the cash out option because they give you that. Like I had a bad one earlier this year. I had Ezekiel Elliott, which was a funny story. It was Thanksgiving Day. And I had Ezekiel Elliott to score first. And I had a coin flip between Justin Jefferson or Ramondre Stevenson to score the first touchdown, right? So a 2 parlay on that. I ended up picking Ramondre Stevenson, which was stupid because I, like I said, I coin flipped it to pick between those two. Justin Jefferson got it. But the first part of the story is I call B-Word and I'm getting Thanksgiving dinner prepped. And I'm like yelling at the TV at this game. And Brian's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the game's on. You're not watching. How are you not watching the Cowboys? And he goes, look at your fucking TV. And I look in the bottom corner. It says previously aired. And then in the top right, it says week 2. And then on the bottom, so I wasn't even running through the right game, and I was all pumped up. And still, I almost hit the bet with the Ezekiel. Well, anyways, he did score first. So I was like, wow, I want to do the cash out option. Well, the problem is I can't cash out in Washington because it's illegal. So I had to convince the wife to let me drive to Portland during Thanksgiving for a minute to go check what we could win because it was like a $50 bet to win like $4,000 or something like that, right? So I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be a pretty decent amount. I drive and they offer me $286. I didn't take it. And then after I got home, after I already drove back, I was like, I probably should have taken it because it didn't hit. But it was one of those moments like you don't know what you're going to get cashed out and they can suspend it too to save their own butts. But I mean, I've had it where like I'm losing it, like you said. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll cash out at 20 cents because I'd rather keep 20 cents than lose all of it. And so sometimes you have to do that.
Living here in Nevada where we don't have anything like that, it would be great because I say all the time, parlays are for suckers. And if I'm being honest with myself, I'm a sucker because every week I'm going to do a parlay. Yep. Like every week of the NFL season, and I'm knock on wood, I hit a few a year, but I'll do a $20 6-teamer. Just, I mean, why not? Favorite and over, stuff like that. And I try and correlate it with the Sunday night game or the Monday night game. So at least I have some hedge value going into it. And it would be nice if they just flashed out. They're like, hey, we'll give you $3,200, for this. If you just want to call it quits.
That would be good. So, Tommy, we've got a big game coming up. Obviously, we've got the Chiefs and the Eagles. What are some of the bets that you're looking at that some of our listeners need to know about?
For traditional betting standpoints, I touched on this last year when you did it. I always like betting the coin flip right off the gate. So you're getting paid on action or lost action immediately. I've always, my entire life, been a tails never fails guy. So probably the last decade, tails, and come through pretty decently. The other one that I like also, it comes off right away, is will the opening kickoff be a touchback? You're laying $1.75, and that's never fun laying a lot, but the odds are forever in your favor in that one, because I think it's either going to go out of the end zone or they're just going to sit on it and, take it where it may be. While you were away, we were talking about MVP odds, and I forgot the stat, and I should have wrote it down, but first-year quarterbacks that win the Super Bowl, or first year in the Super Bowl quarterbacks that win it, win the MVP majority of time. So okay. Mahomes has already been there. I hate to say it, but I think the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm putting some money on Jalen Hurts to win the MVP.
See, I took your coin flip one, because I do that too. I always bet on the coin flip. I try to, if I see a good line on the national anthem over or under, and I know the singer, I try to do that. I haven't seen the odds for that yet, but I'm going to say with Chris Stapleton, he's going to go over. I'll just say that now. But I also took it to another level where I also bet on the team to win the coin toss as well, because that's also straight money. So I got the Eagles because I looked at the stat, and the funny thing is both of them going into their divisional games were the winningest coin toss teams all year. I think the Chiefs were at 14 going into that game, and the Eagles were at 13. So it was like they're both going in really heavy, but it's even money. So I threw some money on that. I did the same thing as you, the touchback, those instant ones. I don't know. And tell me if I'm wrong here, Tommy. I'm not throwing my boatload at those. I'm throwing enough to make me happy if I win, but not to ruin the game for me for the rest of the day. I'm not going to go throw $1,000 on the coin toss and then be like, well, this game sucks. I don't even care anymore. I just lost $1,000, right? Yeah. I build it up as the game goes. I usually bet heavier on an MVP. I usually will bet a little heavier on the game itself. I try not to parlay the over-under, even though I did this year, because I usually fail at that. I can usually pick a winner, and I'm the worst at picking over and unders. I just am. I just can't get it right. I did it again tonight. I had the Cavaliers with the under. Cavaliers won, and they went way over. So that's a hard one for me. Are you better at picking the team or the over-under?
Traditionally, I've been a pretty good total guy. This year, I was terrible at it. Literally, if I told you this game was going to fly over, bet it under. The Niner game, I actually, on our radio show, that was my best bet, was under. Game time decision, I go, you know what? There's been so many times I've watched these Steelers-Ravens games when they have the number 1 and 2 defenses in the league, and the total's 34.5, and they average 9 points a game, dead under, and it's 43-47. So I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a shootout. Let's go. And it, minus the Purdy injury, it could have been. You never know, but I took it on the shorts on that one, as well as that Chiefs game. I bet that over, and nope.
So I came up with something where I have my list of all my prop bets or game bets that I did, and what I wanted to do is throw it at both you guys, okay, and give you the line and say, is this something you would take or you think it's going to hit? To B-Word and Tommy, if you guys don't mind doing that. So the first one that I found a line that I thought was excellent, for me at least. It's plus 1,100 right now for each team to score 1 touchdown in each half and 1 field goal in each half. B-Word, would you take that? Does it sound right?
Yeah, honestly, you have the highest scoring offense in the NFL with the Chiefs, and you've got a pretty dynamic offense with the Eagles. I will say I do think that the Chiefs are going to have a harder time on offense than people are anticipating, just because the Eagles have that stout defense. But let's keep in mind that the Eagles are not the 49ers defense. They have a great defense, but they're not the best defense. And so I will say I would take that with those odds to answer your question directly. But I do think that the Chiefs would have the harder road to get the touchdown and the field goal in each half.
What about you, Tommy?
See, I like the bet. I mean, you're getting great value at plus 1,100. I'm the other way around on this, though. I think the Chiefs are more likely to kick field goals than the Eagles. And that's just because I think, although Patrick Mahomes is probably the greatest quarterback we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years, he's lost some weapons, and the Eagles defense is pretty good. But the Eagles offense, I think, is going to outmatch that defense. So,
well, and let's not discount his ankle either. I mean, I know he's going to have 2 weeks worth of rest.
Correct. And that's why, Jake, not to put a pin in your thing real quick, but one of the props that I really like, at least here on William Hill, you're laying $130 for the Eagles to record the first sack.
That's a good one.
I mean, you're not laying a lot, and I think that's going to be the first one to happen. So that's one of those bets, like you said, you don't want to put a lot on. That's one that I'm putting more than some of these other props because I think there's a lot of value in that one.
Well, yeah, that's one of the best sacking teams in the league. No, see, I if it was 1.5, if they had to get more than one, I don't think I would take the bet. But plus 1,100, I mean, you put a $10 bet, you're taking home $120 that day. That's not bad. Another one that I liked was, and just because this was like a small bet I can throw out there, but plus 750 for either team to kick a game-winning walk-off field goal. And the reason is I'm going into this thinking that the end of the game could be a little closer because they're high scoring. And when you have high scoring teams, usually they're driving down near the end of the game on a comeback because they're so close that somebody usually does that. And that's what I'm actually counting on for this game.
One, you're getting, again, great value, plus 750. One of the prop bets that I hit last year and I tripled up on because Kenny, who runs our show, said I was crazy, but there was an exacta for the score to be exactly 3. And he said, I'll give you 100 to 1 odds and you give me the $1, I'll pay you 100 if that's what hits. And it was. And the reason I like, and this is the same rationale that I'm going to use this year, the spread's 1.5.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So they're not expecting it to be a blowout. So it should be a very close game, meaning it's very likely that the clock's ticking down and they kick that field goal and somebody walks off victorious, whether it's the Chiefs or the Eagles. But to get that value, that should be a minus 110 both sides. But you're getting plus 750. I'll take it all day.
B-word?
Yeah, I would take that for the value. I do think that this is going to be a closer game than probably what most people think. I do think that, I know that it's not been asked specifically, but I do think that the under in this game is probably going to be what I would go with, just because I do think that this game is going to be a lot more competitive. I do not see this as a shootout. So with that being the case, I would probably take that bet because I do think that this may end in a game winner.
Any non-quarterback to have 1 touchdown pass in the game is playing plus 2,200. Now, I took it just because of the value of the bet, but I also took it knowing that the Eagles like to go for it on 4th down. And you have a dynamic offense on both sides with the types of players where they can do some trickery plays and they got to do something different to win the game. That's why I'd take the bet. Now, mind you, I put $3 on it to win $70, but that's still not a bad payout if that hits. Now, B-word, do you think it is, or do you think it's just that's a hope and a dream?
If you're doing a throwaway bet with a hope and a dream, I think that you would probably be okay with that. I don't know that I would bet the house on it. You're looking at arguably the best quarterback of a generation with Patrick Mahomes. I don't see that the ball is going to go out of his hands on a pass. As far as with the Eagles, I think Devonta Smith has thrown a ball before. Don't quote me on that. So, I mean, I could potentially see that. You could see the Philly miracle again, absent Nick Foles. But, I wouldn't bet the house on it.
Right. Tommy?
I actually like this bet, and I'm going to call it right now. So hopefully it comes through and we can replay this over and over. It's going to be Travis Kelce throwing that touchdown. They're going to do a reverse Philly special. They're going to hand it to Kelce. Kelsey's going to pass it to Mahomes in your face. Boom.
That would actually make for a good watch.
So another one that I've been really getting into, sort of like your coin toss one, is who calls the first time out. And I've been watching this with how teams have been holding the clock and stuff. Now, mind you, the favorite to do this is the Eagles. But for some reason in my mind, I see KC coming into this game because it's paying plus 100 for them to call the first time out. And I really just think they're going to do it because I think there's going to be a play with disarray. And I don't know whether it's going to come down to his ankle. I don't know whether it's going to come down to the loudness. I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a feeling that would hit. I think on the other end, it's like negative 115. So it's still not bad money. But I think the Chiefs call it. But that's another one that I think is fun, sort of like your coin toss one, Tommy, that I would throw out there to the fans.
I have one question on that, and you two are better to answer this than I am. I think if you were to say who's going to challenge a play first, I would go with Andy Reid 100%. And if he loses the challenge, he also loses the timeout. So in that sense, does that count toward that bet?
I see. Here's the thing. I don't know. And it's one of those bets where I'm put $15 on to win 30, right? I'll double my money, where I was like, I want to see. This is sort of like a tester bet for me, because this is the first time I've ever done this.
Okay.
Where I'm like, I like looking at these odds every week. I just haven't had the balls to do it. But it's like, and I've also done the play ones, but I haven't seen it with the challenge. And I agreed with you too, because that was the first thought in my mind too, is who do I think is going to challenge first? I think KC will.
Mm-hmm.
If they get charged a timeout, does that count? And so I'm actually going to see what happens here. And I think that would be interesting.
I would think that they would grade it both ways, because you lose it, which means you used it, because technically it is a timeout. Like, while they're reviewing it, you're allowed to gather up, huddle, go over plays, do whatever while the referees are. So it essentially is a timeout. You just don't lose it if you win your challenge.
Right.
Because if you didn't have to challenge it, you wouldn't have had to call the timeout because the play was called correctly.
Correct.
So I'm going to say it is a double dip there.
Then I would say that I would say that Cheeseburger Guy is going to 100% call a timeout before butthole eyes.
Exactly.
The visual of that just really clicked, and it's very accurate.
He's got a couple sand dollars right over his eyelids, doesn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But again, even on our show, there's times, this is a little peek behind the curtain, some of us will bet the other way on the show so that it's not a consensus. Because what fun is that? If there's no, oh no, I disagree. But to bet the Chiefs to call the first time out, and again, I'm going to go back to the ankle.
Yeah. Yeah.
If they call a play and he sees him limping a little bit and he doesn't like, I could see him calling a timeout, or Andy, just the Chiefs in general, and you're getting some positive value on it, take it, roll with it.
Especially right after a sack.
And Jake, you might like this, going back to your correlated touchdown. I mean, both teams should score touchdown in both halves.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then field goals, the total field goal attempts over under is 4.5.
Exactly.
So to me, that plays into your favor.
Yeah, I was thinking, I put that into play because I looked at the over under on that. I've never a lot of over unders I'm failing on, so I don't take those a ton unless it's just a 1+, because it's like I just need them to do it once. So I looked at the over under on the field goals, I looked at the scoringness, and I also saw that the line was only 1.5. And I usually go with the case when you do that, you almost double the score, and that's only when it's between 1 and 4 points that could be the deciding factor of the game. So thank you, because that's why I took that line. I'll give you this one, and I'm going to close out with one more. But this one was Patrick Mahomes' first pass to be complete. Now, this is one of the only ones I'm taking with minus money, because it's paying minus, or I'm sorry, it was first offensive play was pass. So I went with the thought that either team is going to pass the ball first, and that's negative 105. And so I went in with that with $50 to win 97. I'm not getting my full money back, but both these teams, I know they have dynamic running, but I think they're going to start out the game trying to show these quarterbacks who they are and let them showcase themselves. And so I really think the first play of the game is going to be a pass, and that's why I went with that. Tommy, would you agree or no?
No, I mean, they both come out of the gate and they throw, so I like it. But go back to your timeout one. You have the Chiefs at plus money?
Oh, I do. I have the Chiefs at plus 100 on that.
So I'm looking here on the William Hill app, and it says team with first charge timeout, Chiefs minus 120, Eagles are even. Yeah.
So well, as we always see, when people start loading in money on things, the line moves a lot. So everybody might have our Andy Reid, our Reid theory there. But
yeah, I mean, you got it early, and that's what I tell people. If you like something and you like the payout, bet it.
Yeah, get it early.
Same with this game. If that line had gotten up to 3 either way, I'm taking the plus points. I'm going to bet it.
Yeah,
because by game time, it's going to change.
Yeah, I got lucky. I got the Eagles at plus 2.5 right when it came out, and so it was one of those things, because that line moved within 16 minutes all the way to the Chiefs' favor.
Yeah,
it was insane, because I have the Eagles and I have the over, and I'll learn my lesson that I should never do those parlays. But last one, boys, is who's the MVP of the game, and I'll tell you who I've already bet on and the odds for that. But I will announce the odds of who you think's going to win it and if you should bet that or not.
Okay, so I'll start. I'm gonna go with. Oh, see, this is hard. Here's what I want to have happen, and then I'm going to be realistic after it. I think that I want the Chiefs to win. Of course, I want a close game. If the Chiefs win, I'm going to say it's Mahomes. Okay. Realistically, I think the Eagles are going to win. With it being an Eagles win, I think it's 90% of the time it's the quarterback. So I'm going to say that it would end up being Hurts. However, there is an outside chance that if Hassan Reddick plays in the same manner he played last week, it might be Hassan Reddick. So realistically, I'm going to say it's Hurts. I want it to be Mahomes, but there is that outside shot of Hassan Reddick.
Wow. Well, Hurts is paying plus 120. So, I mean, that's the lowest odds for anybody. Mahomes is at plus 130. So you'd still win money. So I think that's a good bet because I think the Eagles are going to go. Now, I hedged it where I have an Eagles bet and I have a Chiefs bet. I'm looking up the Hassan Reddick is plus 3,500. So B-word, if you have a hunch, that's a $5 bet all day and just have fun with it. You know what I mean? Because that could happen.
Right.
But Tommy, who you think's winning the MVP?
I already got $50 on Travis Kelce at plus 850.
See, I got him at plus 1,000.
Oh,
and that's who here's the shitty thing though, because me and you are sitting here saying the Eagles are going to win. See, this is a true degenerate.
Yes.
We don't think they're going to win, but we're still betting the other team to win something else. Which how
it's only
often
happened
does
once.
the other team? Yeah,
but it's
happened
value.
once.
Right.
I mean,
it happened once. Right, but it's value. Yeah, that's a
value.
great.
I mean,
that's a great bet.
I mean, honestly, and this is probably going to be a game time decision. But Juju Smith-Schuster at plus 7,500. Throw $10 on it.
Right.
You know, I mean, this is the best time of year. There's so many options. And I don't know how your books are up there, but William Hill every day is throwing more and more and more. And then we have the cross sports ones where you could bet, you know, will the total score of the game be better than Steph Curry's points, totals, and assists? You could do stuff like that, which
those are fun. Those are
so
fun
much
little
fun.
Ones. Yeah.
So Tommy, last year we touched on the halftime show, arguably the best halftime show of us, right? Of our history. This year we've got Rihanna. I'm not super excited about Rihanna, but I know you're a music head. We didn't have you on for our Everlasting Jukebox. You will be on for the next one. But talk to me a little bit about this halftime show, what your expectations are for it, and if you're excited at all.
I'm actually really excited. I'm definitely part of the Rihanna Navy. And if you're not a Rihanna fan, you definitely don't understand that. But she hasn't put music out in years. She's just having babies and looking fly and making her clothing line. And just musically, she's super talented.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
She doesn't do anything half-assed. And one of the most, I've been racking my brain trying to think like, all right, who is she going to bring out? Like she had a kid with A$AP Rocky who, you know, most people should know if you're a hip hop head, but they have great performances together, great songs together.
So you two are both betting men. What's the line that Chris Brown comes out?
A cocaine line.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry. I thought my bad.
All the hits at the Super Bowl.
All the hits. I mean, the great thing about Rihanna is nobody beats a beautiful woman with a singing voice except Chris Brown.
Jesus Christ. Well, with that, dude, let's
ladies and gentlemen, that was my final appearance on Bleach Bros Podcast.
No, we just reviewed your resume. You'll be back on. So Tommy, let's finish with this and then we'll bring you back for our final segment. So you've already kind of hinted at who your pick is for the winner of this game. Give us your reasoning as to why and give us a final score prediction.
I think this is going to be a very low scoring affair. I think it's going to be Eagles. And again, I hate to say it. I hate the fan base. I hate the teams. I hate it. And Patrick Mahomes I got a man crush on him, but I just don't think he's going to be able to get it done because this defensively, they're better than Kansas City. Offensively, they don't have all the bells and whistles that KC does, especially because Mahomes brings a little cachet to the party. but Jalen Hurts is fighting out of his weight class right now.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to secure the bag when he gets his next contract. So I'm going to say 21-24. Game-winning field goal to end it. So Jake cashes his bag.
Paying plus $750, baby.
It's an excellent, and I just don't want it to be a blowout, and I don't think it's going to be. I don't think the odds makers think it's going to be. I think it's going to be back-to-back, but there's going to be a lot of stalled drives. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a few field goals. I don't think it's going to be an offensive shootout. And if it ends up being a shootout, if it's an offensive shootout, I think the Eagles lose.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they could match that.
I would agree.
But defensively, if they could get a couple stops and then they're going to control the ball and run it, that's why I like the under.
Awesome. Nice. Well, we'll be right back after a quick break.
Welcome back to the show. Let's join B-Word and Jake as they're now joined by expert of the X's and O's and host of the Cover Zero podcast, Jordan Robinson.
J-Rob, welcome back to the show. How you doing tonight, bud?
Doing great, gentlemen. Sad and excited as I always usually am during the Super Bowl because it's obviously what every team aims for at the end of the season, but it's also the last game of the season. But here we are. Love being on with you guys.
Well, thanks again for coming on, man. You were a pivotal part in our show last year. You're going to be a vital part again this year, and we're excited to have this partnership with you. Before we get into the game and breaking down the X's and O's, which, as referenced, you are an expert in that category, I do kind of want to talk with you about the coaching shuffle. So obviously there's been a lot of talk about the Rooney Rule. There's been a lot of talk about minority coaches in the NFL. Can you talk about minority coaches in the NFL and kind of give your take on that as well as the Rooney Rule?
So, I mean, the Rooney Rule, we all know, it was put in so that minority coaches get a look when so many times in the past they didn't. And we all know why in the past that was not the case. My take on the Rooney Rule is now almost as if it's kind of like affirmative action, where the sentiment behind it, I agree with 100%. However, the simple execution of it has just become people checking the box is simply what it's for. Brian Flores had mentioned last season, around the time when he was filing that lawsuit, that those were sham interviews, that people that are normally in the room during those type of interviews weren't even there. And other instances that we have heard about really provide evidence to the fact that it's being treated as just people going through the motions and doing it because it's in place. It's the NFL taking a step in the right direction, getting these owners and everyone else to buy into it and actually apply it the way that it was meant for is another thing. So that's my thought on mainly just the Rooney Rule itself. As far as minority coaches getting other jobs we're starting to see it happen a little bit more, but we're not quite to where it would, could, or should be. And a lot of those things we have seen throughout the NFL and in business in general, throughout every single walk of life. We all know it's not what you know, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. And just look at one of the recent hirings that we had happen this year when Frank Reich was fired in Indianapolis. Yeah. He brings in Jeff Saturday. Yeah. Right? He brought in Jeff Saturday. If that's not a smack in the face to so many other guys that have been are qualified, as let's look at Eric Bieniemy. He's been an offensive coordinator for the Chiefs for a very long time, and he just can't seem to get a job at certain places. Brian Flores had a lot of success over there when he was with Miami, and he wasn't necessarily considered for many other head coaching jobs after he left Miami, even though the dude was the only person ever after a 0-7 start to go 7-0. When they were just auctioning off people when they were trying to rebuild in Miami, he ended up still getting competition and getting buy-in from professionals to do. And we've seen now that a lot of head coaches are getting consideration when they are due, be it black, be it Syrian Lebanese, like with Robert Saleh getting his opportunity. We've seen this start to happen. Mike McDaniel, he's, the logic route. I'm a logic boy like you, Jake, he looks like him too. But nonetheless, him as well landing his spot in Miami. We're starting to see more of it. We're starting to see female roles in assistant places, in assistant jobs all throughout the NFL. There's an assistant female coach who is with Philadelphia that will be coaching in the Super Bowl. right? We're seeing all of these things start to happen. And as I think more time goes on, the more that you give these people opportunities, the more that you give black coaches, minority head coaches opportunities to show what they can do, the more doors that's going to open for others to show what they can do as well.
One of the people who I think was entirely shafted in this whole process in the off season was Lovie Smith. And I think you can kind of tell, I don't know if Lovie cared because he won that last game. He the Houston Texans beat the Bears and ultimately lost the first round draft pick, or the number 1 overall draft pick. But Lovie Smith is a hell of a coach. I've always liked Lovie Smith, even all the way back and when he was the Bears head coach and took them to the Super Bowl. But I do like their replacement with the guy from San Francisco. I do think that's probably D'Amico Ryans is going to be an upgrade in Houston. And that was one of the concerns that I had was after the way that Lovie was treated, who would want to coach for the Houston Texans? And I did like the hire of D'Amico Ryans. I do think that he's going to do some things down there. I think that he's got influence. He's got the heritage down there, having played down there before. But I do think that there's a good opportunity for the NFL to not only have people of color and people of different genders and stuff in different roles. I like the diversity factor that is coming into the NFL. I do question the effectiveness of the way that it's happening though, because I do feel like the owners probably just do interviews just to do the interviews and don't necessarily interview to hire, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100% it does. And I remember to reference Brian Flores again, there was a text that went from Bill Belichick to Brian Flores before he had an interview for the Giants job last year. And it said, hey, they're thinking that you're the guy, whatever. And Flores was then like, oh, really? I got it. And Belichick then said, oh, no, not you. Wrong, Brian. Right. I wonder if some of that, because Belichick knew that would leak, I wonder in the back of my mind, we all know how Bill Belichick, like chess, he's thinking several moves ahead. I wonder if him sending that text, knowing it was in fact a sham interview to Brian Flores, a guy who he has went to bat for and appreciates and respects and all those sorts of things. I wonder if that was like Bill Belichick trying to shine light in some way on how these interviews are in fact just there as a place filler and like, hey, look what I did. I did something. I did this. Give me my credit. And I completed the qualifications of the Rooney Rule. So that was just something that I thought when he did that.
Now, we also have two pretty dynamic quarterbacks here in the Super Bowl, regardless of race. But what's notable about it is we've got both Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, who are both African-American quarterbacks. It just so happens to be the first time that we have two paired up against each other in the big game. For you having being mixed race yourself and everything else like that, what sort of significance does this have on the culture, and what does this kind of play out for in society?
I think a lot of what it plays out for in society is it shows, and we're seeing this permeated. First of all, I would say that we're seeing black quarterbacks at so many other levels throughout college, high school. The best athletes are now being converted into quarterbacks. And the fact that we now have two black quarterbacks for the first time going head to head in the Super Bowl is awesome. It's dope to see. And I think really it's just these two specific quarterbacks. And primarily Patrick Mahomes should be, if you don't have Patrick Mahomes as the best quarterback in the league right now, I really don't know what you're watching on Sunday, Thursday, Monday, whatever the day is. And then in Jalen Hurts' case, this is someone who has been doubted, even though he's been put in positions such as when he was in Alabama and then was benched for Tua. Handled that very well. Went on to Oklahoma to be able to better himself for the draft, got drafted, sat there as a backup, kept working. Every single person who has ever been in the locker room with Jalen Hurts signs off on him. Nick Saban, though he didn't necessarily think he was his guy at that time, will tell you Jalen is a worker. Jalen is great, has all these great things to say about him. And it's really awesome just to see us getting two black quarterbacks in the Super Bowl who it would seem absolutely foolish if anyone were to ever say these two weren't some of the best at their job. These are two MVP candidates. One of the two of them are going to win this award. And we all know Lamar Jackson has won the award as a black quarterback. It's getting to the point now where you have so many minorities throughout the league in not in executive positions per se, but maybe coaching positions. You have more of them than we used to. You have more black quarterbacks than we used to. This is a league that is 77, 76% black as the players go, right? I mean, you have now by far more black quarterbacks than you do white cornerbacks. We didn't think this would be a thing at some point in the scope of the NFL, but this is where we are. It's beautiful to see. It echoes the things and the teachings and the phrases of Martin Luther King Jr. for the content of the character, and in the case of the NFL, the skill of the player, not the color of the skin. But when the color of the skin is pretty much who is out there all the time, this is sometimes can be the people that you can relate to the most, and can also be a reason for where the person doing it and the most right for the job is getting the job. And I think that's going to continue to permeate throughout football at all levels.
So as far as this game is concerned, we have a dynamic matchup. We have the number one offense in the league, the Kansas City Chiefs, going against one of the top defenses in the league with the Philadelphia Eagles. And arguably, you're looking at talent across the board on both teams, whether it be in the trenches, whether it be in the skill players. Kind of help us break this matchup down. Let's kind of talk about initially the Kansas City offense versus that Philadelphia defense. What are some things that you see that can kind of creep up in this game, and where are some advantages that you kind of look at too?
This will be easily the most dynamic offense that this Philadelphia defense has played in a long time. Throughout the playoffs, they've had it pretty easy offensively, going against the likes of Daniel Jones. Brock Purdy wasn't even really a factor in that game. He got hurt before he was able to be, and this game, I think with Patrick Mahomes, you have the quarterback he was pressured the most out of any quarterback in the entire NFL this year, but he was sacked the fewest. This is the guy who knows how to navigate pockets very well. This Philadelphia pass rush, though, is absolutely unreal right now. It is unreal how deep that pass rush in Philadelphia goes. And I don't think the majority of Philly fans know how blessed they are to have all the dudes that they can deploy to be able to go plant a quarterback in the ground. I mean, they got gardeners over there, bro. They're planting them every week. 70 sacks on the season. Quickest team in the history of NFL to ever reach 50 sacks in a single season. 70 is top 3 all time in terms of total sack numbers. Brandon Graham and Robert Quinn are rotational edge rushers. Both of these dudes not Quinn, but both of these dudes are effective pass rushers, and Brandon Graham had 11 sacks this season. Josh Sweat had 11 sacks this season. Javon Hargrave had 11 sacks this season. And that doesn't even talk about Hassan Reddick, who had 17 sacks this season. I mean, when you have that type of pass rush productivity up front to be able to affect games, and you can then dedicate 7 people in coverage, 8 people in coverage to be able to manipulate quarterbacks, guard the people who are going out into the passing pattern, that really changes what you're able to do as a defense, and it gives you a huge advantage as a team overall.
Well, I mean, we just talked about the significance of 2 quarterbacks coming in. They're both black. And how that is changed with the game of the era. However, which quarterback do you think is going to have a better game to change everything that's coming against them? Because I mean, we're seeing 2 guys that are super dynamic, right? And we're also seeing 2 defenses that can be. I mean, I think the Eagles defense is better than the Chiefs
for sure.
But who do you think is going to stand out more to make the difference out of the game? Because I mean, they are both the favorites to win the MVP, and majority we know quarterbacks usually win it. I'm sure you probably think either one of those quarterbacks will win it if they win the game. But what do you think is going to happen here?
For me, honestly, I mean, the Chiefs. It's Mahomes would be the answer to that question. The Chiefs go as Mahomes goes. Plain and simple, bottom line. Even if his ankle is sprained, like we all know it is, and he's not going to be the guy that's going to run as much as he normally does, he is still going to be the one that will. If the Chiefs are going to have a chance, it's going to be because he has a Herculean type of effort. Jalen Hurts, as we saw in these playoff games, hasn't had to do an inordinate amount of production in order for his teams to dominate, right? That Philadelphia offense, that Philadelphia team as a whole, they can do so many different things independent of Hurts. It's very rare you have an offensive line that's the best in the NFL and a defensive line that's the best in the NFL on the same team. And behind them, while Hurts is not my MVP, really, like he's in the convo, sure. He's on the podium-ish. He's not in my top 3 picks. If I had a vote, he would be 4th. But, beside the point. But nonetheless, He's a leader in the locker room. He's a very, very pivotal part of that running game with how he can change the math with his legs as a runner. But if there's someone that's going to be able to leave their mark on this game the most, it's going to be what Patrick Mahomes is able to do against this Philadelphia defense, which we all agree is the better of the two, when you really only have one other true difference maker on that Chiefs offense with Travis Kelce. Isaiah Pacheco's been a nice find, runs really hard. It's almost like every single time he gets a carry or gets a touch, it's like he looks like it's the last time he's ever going to run the ball. Like he just is so violent and aggressive, and I love watching him. But the other difference maker from Patrick Mahomes, as far as a playmaker goes, is Travis Kelce, and that's it. Jalen Hurts has a lot more people he could put into those folders as difference makers than Mahomes does. So between the two quarterbacks, it's Mahomes, very easy for me.
So, but you bring a good point in the sense of, if we took the two quarterbacks out of this scenario, because I mean, there are people dropping money that Gardner Minshew and I don't even know the backup for the Chiefs. I can't name it.
Chad Henne.
Okay. Would win the MVP, which is a fucking dumb bet, but I mean, throw your money away if you want. Mm-hmm. If anybody else in this game could be a different difference maker, and behind the curtain, you were texting me today and we were going back and forth, and you're watching video. I mean, you're watching like in-depth video of every damn player. Like, you're better than me. I watch the games. I move on with my life every week. You're somebody that actually studies this stuff. Who else on the field is going to be the biggest difference maker in these games?
If for people, when you're watching the game on Sunday, here's how would I say it? When the Eagles have the ball, watch that offensive line, because with just the way the broadcast works for the NFL, the offensive line, the ball is what you're going to be able to see in most shots. Receivers in secondary, they go downfield, they're out of your field of view. Watch that offensive line. Watch Jason Kelce. We have brothers playing in the Super Bowl as well. I don't mean black brothers. We got brothers and brothers, right? We got that too. And watch Jason Kelce, the center for the Eagles. Watch Landon Dickerson, the guard, and watch Isaac Seumalo. These three dudes in the middle, the way they are able to ragdoll opposing super athletes, which everyone in the NFL is that, the way they are able to ragdoll 300-pound super athletes, it just blows my mind constantly. So much of the Eagles' run game centers on double teams at the point of attack in the interior. So when Jason Kelce snaps that ball and you have one defensive tackle or another one to his right and to his left, Chris Jones is going to be one of them. Derek Nandi is going to be another one. There's going to be a double team on them. And most likely Derek Nandi is going to get thrown and moved and manhandled. And this offensive line for Philly, I have no doubts they are going to impose their will on this Chiefs defensive front. Just watch the way how the line of scrimmage from the snap moves in favor of Philly, and how Kansas City's defensive line can't simply penetrate at the same level. Chris Jones will get his, don't get me wrong. He will. But if there was another unsung player to watch, or some person that may not be getting the mainstream recognition, it's that Philly offensive line. They just impress me. I shake my head over and over again. It doesn't even have to be those three I mentioned. Watch any of the five out there. Lane Johnson on the right side, and then Jordan Mailata on the left side. I mean, Jordan Mailata is 6'8", 360 pounds, and moves. I mean, Lane Johnson is incredible. Feels like he's been there forever. And just those are the five guys. That Philly offensive line to me, I just can't say enough great things about it.
So when it comes to the center position in particular, when you're talking about the line, I've heard it said multiple times before that if you have a quality center as an anchor in that line, it basically cuts the field in half as far as being able to make the calls, because you've got an adequate center being able to call out some of the defensive calls for the line, but you've also got the quarterback being able to audible or set up the calls as well. Kelce is one of the best centers in the league right now, if not the best center in the league. And I do think that is something that does set the Eagles apart, because not only is their line excellent, but their play callers are excellent as far as the center and as well as the quarterback. You did talk about Chris Jones, however. Chris Jones is a menace. If you're the Eagles, how do you try to stop this man?
Really, where Chris Jones makes his money is on passing downs, known passing downs. That is why he is so dominant. That is why I had him as my Defensive Player of the Year vote. I think Nick Bosa will win it, and I have no problems with anyone voting for Nick Bosa. The other person I put on the podium is your boy Micah. Just wanted to fit that in there for you, B. Definitely. But Chris Jones, really, where he can be, I don't want to say but where the Eagles will have the advantage is when it comes to running. If you're an offensive lineman, you are an aggressor in the run game. You are a reactionary player in the passing game. Almost, in a sense, two different skill sets. Yes, you're blocking someone, but you are doing it in a different way, right? You're protecting versus attacking, pass run, right? And Chris Jones excels mostly when he's going after the quarterback. But every time he's gonna go after the quarterback, and every time there's a run, he will have 4 hands on him at all times. Just as I was talking about with those double teams that they do a lot in the interior. And what I really want to see is when Philly gets into, if they are able to get into 3rd and 9, like known passing situations, which is a very tough place to be against the Eagles because we all know they like to go for it on 4th down. Their running game is so effective that 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, that's a rundown. 2 downs to get 6. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, one of the best rushing attacks in the league. We can do that. Sure. So it's really tough to kind of know when those downs are. But if you get to real longer downs in distance, or if it is a pass play on 3rd and long, watch Chris Jones' ability to be able to, as a guy who's 300 pounds himself, move so well. And just like I have with one of my reasons why I have him as Defensive Player of the Year, double teams is something that he sees all the time. He's used to it. He's built for it. And him going against the best offensive line, you're basically going to get the best on the best. And when you get to a situation like the Super Bowl, that's what you want to see. And I think that's something that's going to be on display when the game starts.
The way I'm thinking, I could tell who you're already going to pick based on who you talked about for one player. However, I believe the game's won up front on both sides of the ball. And you have reiterated that one team has the best up front. And we are going to ask you the score and who you think is going to win. But how the hell are the Chiefs going to be able to get through that defensive line? And how also are they going to be able to get through the Eagles' offensive line, in my opinion? Because I think the Eagles are winning. And I know we're going to get to your pick, but I just don't see the Eagles losing this game. Tell me how they are going to lose this with front line so good on both sides of the ball.
The path to a Chiefs victory would look like Patrick Mahomes doing the unthinkable, doing the imaginable, doing the amazing, which are things that we have seen him do so many times, right? This would be another feather in the cap of him continuing to add to that. His efficiency and the way that he has shifted from taking deep drops within the pocket, he's understood that can tend to hurt offensive lines. He's really shortened up his drop depth this year, which was really the only blemish that he had on his game going into this season. And the Chiefs' offensive line, they are not a bad unit at all. Yes, Jason Kelce, as you were mentioning, B-word, I'm with you. He's the best center in the NFL. For sure. I have no qualms about that at all. I think he definitely is. The second best center is Creed Humphrey, who's the center for the Chiefs. Joe Thuney, one of the top guards in the NFL. The tackles on the Chiefs are kind of where you could be had. Andrew Wiley, Orlando Brown, that's going to be tougher. But in the case of Mahomes, he navigates pressure so well, right? It's almost like, did you guys ever play, I'm sure everyone here listening played Mario Kart, right? And there was always, what was it? The red turtle shell was just a little bit faster than you when you were trying to get away from it. It's the inverse whenever Patrick Mahomes is running away from a rusher. He runs just fast enough to get away from who's ever chasing him. Somehow he knows. I don't know how, but he does it. And his ability to move and navigate and be able to just find plays or play at a different speed than everybody else is a way that he might be able to find success and be able to win. The Chiefs the Eagles probably aren't expecting Andy Reid to run the ball a ton. He has never been known to do that. You do have Isaiah Pacheco over there who rivals your boy, Tony Pollard, in how effective he is on a per rush basis. He can do damage. One way you can beat Philly this year has been on the ground. And that might be able to be something where they have some success. So if there was to be a path, Mahomes doing amazing stuff and running the ball might be it.
So talk to me about the Chiefs trying to contain the run with Philly. you already mentioned how Philly loves to run. I think the entire world knows that Philly loves to run. Jalen Hurts is a beast when he's got the ball in his hands, whether it be a 4th and 1 or a 3rd and 1, trying to get the QB sneak, or whether he's going off on a run of his own anyway, or it's just completely just done on the fly. This team it's just dynamic when you're talking about the run, and it's a huge threat, not only trying to contain a quarterback, but also trying to contain Miles Sanders, trying to contain Boston Scott, trying to contain some of these guys. For the Chiefs specifically, how do they try to shut this down to kind of minimize that, to make Jalen Hurts win this with his arm?
This is probably a game I think you see a lot of stacked boxes from the Chiefs. Basically, they put more bodies in the middle, and they're going to try to challenge Jalen Hurts to win over the middle if he's going to throw the ball. Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, he likes to send pressure. He does. That's one of the things that he's been known for. A lot of people reference that Giants Super Bowl against Tom Brady and the undefeated Patriots, where that pressure ended up bursting the motherfucking pipe. It did. And you might try to go to that again on those known passing situations. There's the linebacking core for Kansas City, has some pretty athletic guys, Willie Gay Jr., Nick Bolton, but they have another rookie out of Wisconsin, Leo Chenal, who comes in when they do want to go to 3 linebacker packages, base packages. The base defense for Philly is a 4-3, 4-down defensive lineman, 3 linebackers. Chanel's a thumper, 250 pounds, strong kid. But most of the NFL is played out of 11 personnel. Guess who runs a ton of 11 personnel? 11 personnel being 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. Philly. I don't know how Spags is going to try to match that. My guess is that he's going to keep Derek Nandi on the field until he pukes, because he's their best run defender on the interior. George Karlaftis, rookie out of Purdue, who can sometimes kick inside on known passing situations. He's coming into his own as an edge defender against the run, but it's different when you're going against Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, who are the offensive tackles for Philly. How would they try to stop it? I think you do is one high safety, cloud the box, and do what's called basically a scrape exchange. Defensive end crashes, linebackers scrape around to try to defend Jalen Hurts and make him keep it and see if he's healthy enough to be a factor running the ball.
One of the things that I've noticed watching both of these teams throughout the year is that they can be had if you're tossing the ball. If this becomes a passing situation, the Eagles corners, the Eagles safeties, they're great, they're good, but they can be had. The Chiefs, same thing. There's been some games where they can be had. Which set on each of these teams, or which set on the Eagles or the Chiefs, do you think has the advantage in this matchup? Talking about their secondary.
Oh, for me, I would push back a little bit as far as the Eagles being had through the air. That's the number 1 pass defense in the NFL this year. Sure, 100%. A lot of it stems from having that pass rush up front. But I mean, the corner tandem of Darius Slay and James Bradbury over there in Philly is the best corner tandem in the NFL. Might only be rivaled by what you have over there in New York with Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. But that's the best corner tandem in the NFL. There's only one other cornerback other than Sauce Gardner who allowed a lower quarterback rating when targeted into his coverage. That was James Bradbury. The QB rating when targeting him was like 53, right? 53, I want to say 52, something like that. And for sake of reference, the worst quarterback in the NFL, Zach Wilson, he had a 72 quarterback rating. And when if a quarterback was to be able to hike the ball every single play and spike it into the turf every single down, that's a 39 quarterback rating. So basically, targeting James Bradbury is more similar to spiking the ball into the turf on every single play than it is compared to the worst quarterback in the NFL. That's the type of coverage we're dealing with over there.
So I will push back, and that was strategic because my Cowboys put 40 on that Eagles defense, and yes,
they sure did.
Let the eye rolls roll. So anyway, so
they sure did, man. They sure did.
They sure did. Sorry.
Also, no C.J. Gardner-Johnson, no Avonte Maddox,
we're not
Edwards.
No Cowboys in the Super Bowl.
We're
Let's
not talking
who's in the fucking Super
specifics
Bowl
here. I had to throw it in. Man, this is the only time I can enjoy talking Cowboys and Super Bowl. So there we go. So talk to me a little bit about the the team on each team that doesn't get enough reference. You've got special teams, right? So a lot of games are won and lost by special teams. A lot of games, special teams doesn't even matter. How does it factor into this game? Who's got the advantage this time?
It's a good question. Special teams is, I'll be honest, I'll be dead honest with you guys. Like Jake said, I watch a lot of coaches' film, a lot of all 22, NFL Game Pass. I'm breaking down 3 techniques, coverages, quarter, all these different things.
But you ain't watching the white boys kicking the fucking ball, are you?
Sure am not.
Brothers on brothers.
Fast forward that shit. I'll tell you right now. But you're right, B. It's an unsung area of the game, and it tends to be only something that people talk about when it's a really pivotal contest, right?
Yeah.
We all saw Kansas City last week in their game against the Bengals. A penalty put Harrison Butker, the kicker, in a position to set him to the Super Bowl, and he did. And if he didn't, we'd be talking about him like his name was Brett Maher. Maybe.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep. Great reference, by the way.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like the kickers, yes, they have one job, but it almost gets belittled. It's like they make it, yeah, you should have. But if they don't, you're terrible, you're trash, you're garbage, get out of here. So I mean, it's a pivotal part of the game. I can say that with the depth that Philly has, they are just in position to where their special teams, from what I would imagine, again, I don't watch it, so I'm not going to break down too many points of it. But when you have the depth that Philly does, your backup and second string linebackers, the guys are going to be out there blocking, as opposed to just some dude like Kansas City might have in the special teams to be able to try to make a pivotal point there. But the only thing I would reference is we saw Harrison Butker just knock one through the uprights. And if he would put in that position again, he's been their kicker for a while. And this team has been in a lot of big games and a lot of big stages. So that's kind of where I would tend to hedge my bets towards with one special teams unit.
Well, J-Rob, we started this interview, for this special, talking about coaching and the Rooney Rule and all those things. But if it came down to it, who do you think is going to outcoach who for this game? Because as we know, the players on the field are the ones that make things happen. However, there are decisions made in a game, whether it's timeouts being called, clock management, who you're putting in, what play you're calling, that really matters. And out of the 2 coaches we have in this Super Bowl, who do you think is going to outcoach who in this chess match?
It's a great question. Andy Reid is the experienced, tried and true guy. He's been here before, all those things. Nick Sirianni, though, man, I love that dude's aggressiveness. I really love it. Got to give him a lot of props for it. It's such a tough question because I feel like when Andy Reid was in his first Super Bowl, I often thought the dude should outsource his clock management to India. Just like find someone else to do it. Let's offshore it. Let's just handle that because he didn't know how to do it. It's something that he himself has sharpened as well over time. And I can't recall as many coaching blemishes on the area of Reid that I previously was able to easily draw from. So I guess to not dance around the question, I would have to go to Reid because I feel like he's been here before. I'm going to lean on that experience at this time. We are, with the job that Nick Sirianni has done, granted he's coaching the best roster in the NFL, hands down, I don't think there's a question about that. But we have to also remember this is this dude's second season as a head coach. Andy Reid's been doing this for a long time. And that's really where I would give. I think that one thing you don't have to worry about, like I said, with Sirianni, you don't got to worry about whether or not that dude's going to put it on his team. Let them go decide it to win it. It's 4th and 2. Oh, he's going for it. It's 4th and 3. He's going for it. No questions asked. We already know this. And it might help him because he's not the play caller. That is Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator. So he can tend to think about different things. Whereas opposed to if it's 3rd and 4, do I want to run counter away from the 3 technique? But let's say they overload it and give me an odd front. Do I then want to try to go off of all these different things that go through coaches' minds? He can then look to do other things. But I'm going to go with Andy Reid, a guy who has been in these positions before, who knows how the whole entire long game can be. But I do think it's very close because both of these guys, they're very good coaches.
So that brings us to the forecast. So we've got the Eagles, champions of the NFC, versus the Chiefs, champions of the AFC, the number 1 offense versus one hell of a defense and great teams combined. What's your pick, and give me a score?
On Sunday, I am going to be hoping so much, even though I'm a Raiders fan. Mahomes is in my division. I do think he was bred on Skynet, right? He's a Skynet. I've said this before. He's a horror movie villain that was brewed in Skynet somewhere. He was concocted in a lab. And it's almost like a horror movie villain like Jason, right? It doesn't matter how many times you shot Jason, shot Michael Myers. By the end of the movie, he's going to come back. Doesn't matter if Mahomes is down 28-14, down 20-0, like my Raiders had him this year, 17-0. Doesn't matter. By the end of the movie, he's going to come back and he's going to kill you. He's done that so many times, and I'm going to be rooting for that. But as much as I've watched this Philly team, I mean, good God, it's the best roster in the NFL. The game, Jake, I think it was you who said it earlier, the game starts in the trenches. On the Cover Zero podcast, we say that so many times. And when you have the best trenches on both sides of the ball, I mean, it's 1 through 5, left tackle all the way to right tackle. Mailata to Dickerson to Kelsey to Suamalo to Lane Johnson. At worst, Isaac Suamalo is a top 14 guard in the NFL. There are 64 guards that start every Sunday, provided none of them get hurt, so probably 75 played throughout the course of a season. And at worst, you got a dude who's inside the top. I mean, it's stupid how good they are. They shouldn't be able to be this good. Devontae Smith is your number 2 receiver. I mean, I could go on and on and on. They got C.J. Gardner-Johnson off the scrap heap. I mean, it's unfathomable the job that Howie Roseman. It is. Howie Roseman has just been wheeling and dealing all year. And football is the most team-oriented sport on the planet. Mahomes is the best quarterback on the planet. Chris Jones is my defensive MVP. But those are 2 men going against an incredibly, incredibly well-oiled and well-put-together machine. I got to go with Philly as much as it's to my chagrin. I got to go with Philly, man. I just can't. The only way Mahomes would do it would be with a Herculean effort, and I would love to see it because it would go down in the record books if he did. But I got Philly, let's call it like 27-22, something like 27-23, Philly.
So we're in the same boat. I got Philly 30-24. I'll just say that. But I will say this. It's funny to me because we have so many people out there that are like, I don't care who wins. I just want a good game. And I think regardless with these 2 teams, we're going to get a good game. It's not going to be one of those blowouts on either side of the ball unless there's a surprising fucking factor that happens. And I think that we can all enjoy that part. Knowing that we're coming into a game with so many good fucking players on all sides of the ball, not going, wow, the Giants made it past the Eagles somehow and they made it past, you know what I mean? Like there's not a team in there that we're going, I didn't see this coming. And I think that's a benefit to have here. But no, J-Rob, seriously, thank you, dude. You are the expert of X and O's that we always have on here. We love that. Love the prediction. I'm on your side with it. I see everything you're saying. I'm going to try to follow more like you. I know B-Word already is. Every now and then he'll squeeze in a cowboy fucking reference, but good on you, dude. Good fucking game. It's going to be a great Sunday.
Indeed it is. I'm glad we get the Chiefs too, because man, that Bengals offensive line, as injured as it is, going against Philly this week, oh my, that would be ugly.
Well, J-Rob, again, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back for our final segment, but we'll be right back after a short break.
Welcome back to the show. Let's join B-Word and Jake as they are now joined by co-host of the Midday Show with Andy and Randy on 92.9 FM The Game in Atlanta, Georgia, Andy Bunker.
Well, welcome in, Andy. How are you today?
I'm great, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. Looking forward to the big game.
Of course, it's always good to bring back the original Don Juan of the Motod Mafia. A big throwback there. Bunky Pants, and I go back quite a bit. Not that we've been like the closest friends in the world, like me and you, B-Word, because you love to hate me. But no, it's good that I sent out the invite. I'm glad that you decided to come on here and do the Super Bowl special with us. We've had a lot of great guests, a lot of good commentary. But I do have one question for you, Bunker, before we start. You have a cool last name. Is that a great thing, or is it a curse? Because like you get nicknames like Bunky Pants, like from me or something like that. Like, would you rather it just be something like Smith, or are you happy like that you have something that's a little more like, you know, has some oomph to it?
I mean, I love it.
Okay.
I never thought about an alternative until right now. I didn't realize I had a choice. But no, I love it because you don't meet a lot of people with this last name, so that's helpful. It's a little bit memorable. It's also nice as we get sort of further and further away from the 70s, and people don't really remember Archie Bunker as much.
Mm-hmm.
That was tough in elementary school. Like every teacher thought they were hilarious on the first day of school. Like, oh, you know, say hi to Archie. Like, yeah. Fictional character from a TV show from 25 years ago. I will absolutely say hello to them for you. I love it. It's great. And now I'm, you know, repopulating Georgia with other little babies whose last name
little baby bunks.
Bunker as well. So there's going to be more of us. So look out.
Yeah, see, I think I'd rather have a last name at first because I can't wait for State Farm to drop off the planet and stop wearing khakis. Because everywhere I go, especially because I'm still in sales, it's the fact of, oh, are you wearing khakis? Hi, Jake from State Farm. And I'm just over it. Like, I really am. Like, it's just the epitome of it. This needs to stop.
How come he's handsome in black now? Remember when he was pudgy white?
Schlubby and white?
Yeah,
yeah.
All of a sudden, Jake from State Farm's just like handsome young black guy with a nice haircut, and it's like he's hanging out with Patrick Mahomes. It's like I don't know. It was all of a sudden we woke up one day and it was like, oh, all right, here's this guy.
America had to become progressive like their competitor. Oh, bad pun. I just went with that, but B-word, I'll let you jump back in to save me from the train wreck that I'm about to become.
We're definitely not touching this anymore. And please do me a favor and wear jeans next time as opposed to khakis. But Bunker, so this is my first time interacting with you, so I'm really excited that you're here for our second annual Super Bowl preview show. We hope that you continue to partner with us again in the future. But the one of the things that really excites me is that you've been able to work in sports in multiple different markets. And, you know, one of the markets that I hate the most is the Philadelphia Eagles. I am a Dallas Cowboys fan. We do not mesh. I just think that Eagles fans are like the scum of the earth. But of course, you're down there in Georgia. You know, you're in Atlanta's country. You've been in the Pacific Northwest. You've been in a couple other places. Can you kind of talk about the difference between some of these markets that you've been able to experience?
Yeah. So I covered the Seahawks' second Super Bowl working for the flagship station in Seattle. I covered the Falcons' Super Bowl a couple years after that at the flagship here in Atlanta. And I covered one of the Patriots' Super Bowls when I was living and working in Boston as well. So three very different markets, very different experiences. And I think a lot of it just has to do with context. Like when I was in Boston, that was their fourth appearance in a decade or so. So it had become maybe even more than that. Honestly, I don't even remember, but it had become so expected at that point that I felt like people, it didn't take it for granted because Boston fans are really diehard, and you know it was a bit of a drought before the Patriots won that first one in 2001. So I think they still appreciated it, but it almost felt like this is what we expect to have happen. This is a birthright of a Patriots fan. Tom Brady will be here forever. We're always going to win, that kind of stuff. Like, so it was very different. People were super into it. Don't get me wrong, but the, I don't know, like the hunger or the desperation that I felt here in Atlanta wasn't there. Seattle was interesting too, because it was the second one in a row and they won the first one. So I think that there was a little bit of the desperation that was off that one as well. Like the excitement was there because folks thought the Seahawks were going to go back to back, and obviously they had an opportunity to do so. Being on the air the next day after that loss was pretty tough, but it was nothing compared to being on the air the next day after the Falcons loss, because Falcons didn't have one the year before. You know what I mean? The Falcons don't have any ever. And, you know, if you're familiar with the history of Atlanta sports, it's been pretty good the last couple of years, but it was a drought, man. Like the Braves, up until that point, when the Falcons blew that game 28-3, the Braves had one World Series in 95, and that was it. Georgia hadn't won a national championship since 1980. The Hawks had never won anything in Atlanta. Atlanta United had won a champ, but Atlanta United hadn't won a championship at that point either. So like it was crazy to witness that. Like Falcons fans are already a masochistic group. They just believe the worst is going to happen at all times. And they've been proven right over and over and over again. But like covering that run was really exciting because they were really good and they only been to one Super Bowl before and all that. And then I was watching a game with one of my best friends who's a Atlanta native and media guy, covers the team, all that. And I was with him and all his buddies who are from Atlanta. And they're up 28-3. Like they're making plans. Where are we going after the game? Going to the old club we used to go to, all that kind of stuff. And then just like slowly watching Tom Brady rip their souls from their bodies.
Yes.
It was brutal. And then being on the air the next day, like that's one of those things that you still can't bring it up here. Like people, they're not over it. They'll never be over it. Maybe when the Falcons, knock on wood, someday win one, maybe that'll exercise that demon. But that is a fresh wound, man. Like 28-3 is kind of a funny ha 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 like joke around the country. Somebody blows a lead. It's like, oh, that's 28-3. Not here. Someone will stab you if you make a joke about 28. They do not joke around about that one. And so, so those are the differences. Like Super Bowls in markets are huge. Like people are into it. They similarly into it in all of the markets. And I was in sports, so I was kind of close to it anyway. But I'm more thinking about the aftermath of losses. And there's nothing, and I mean nothing. Like I've never seen anything like the aftermath of 28-3 here in Atlanta.
So, Bunker, what you're saying is wherever you go to work, if a Super Bowl is happening there, they're most likely going to lose, and you're going on the air the next day.
It's
okay.
It's crazy. Like no way. There's any other radio host in America that's ever had to go on the air the next day and talk about losses like that. Like, I mean, I guess I'm good at it or whatever because I've got the experience doing it, but there's nobody else in the country who is on the air after not handing it to Marshawn Lynch and on the air after 28-3 except for me.
So, Bunker, what I would really love to see you do, and no offense to you or your family or anything that you're rooting yourself there in Georgia, but I'm going to need you to buy some real estate over in Philadelphia, and we're going to need you to go and work for their CBS affiliate or something like that, so that way you can go ahead and get on air after the game on Monday. Because as a Cowboys fan, man, like I've said before, I just can't stand Philly. But that kind of relates me to this next question here. You've got the experience to be able to work in markets where, the Patriots didn't really have that threatening person within their division, right? Or that threatening team within their division. Maybe the Bills on certain years, maybe the Jets on others. For the Seahawks, it was the Niners. They had that big battle with the Niners. The Falcons right now, I mean, yes, you have the interdivisional stuff. They had a chance to make the playoffs this year. They had the ability to do it. You did have Tom Brady on a team. You had the Panthers trying to make some waves. Talk with me a little bit about rivalries. So what are some of the best NFL rivalries that you've witnessed or that you've been a part of?
Covering the Seahawks at that time, that Seahawks 49ers rivalry was legit. Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh hated each other. Like genuinely back to Pac-12 Stanford USC days, like hated each other. And there's always been, there's always a little West Coast animosity anyway, like Seattle and Portland have their thing. Seattle and San Francisco, kinda. LA and San Francisco, like all the West Coast cities are a little bit like, everybody's got the chip on their shoulder, little brother wise. So the Seattle San Francisco thing was legit. What I didn't have any idea about until I moved here was how much Falcons fans hate Saints fans and how much Saints fans hate Falcons fans. Like it is very college football, like it's very Auburn, Alabama, like, Georgia Tech kind of like, and I think a lot of it goes back to Hurricane Katrina when folks had to evacuate New Orleans, and a lot of folks came to Atlanta because they had family here, and a lot of folks never left. So there's a lot of New Orleans people here in Atlanta, but man, those fan bases hate each other. And when they're both good, which hasn't happened often, a couple of years ago when the Falcons were good and going to the playoffs and Drew Brees was there and still in his prime, those are some really good matchups, man. Like the Saints fans make the trip here, and the stadium will get loud and the tailgates will get crazy. Obviously, the atmosphere in New Orleans is great. Like, that's a great fan base. But yeah, like fist fights. Like, I hosted the Falcons tailgate show for years, and when the Saints would be in town, we would multiple fist fights we would see, like just in the parking lot, just people getting hammered and going at it. So that's one that I think is people don't know about, like kind of outside of the region, but it is real and it's as good as any rivalry in the NFL. Just the teams aren't always good, but the fans are. Like, fans are always getting after it. They absolutely hate each other, which is, that's what it is. That's what makes it work. It's about the hatred.
Nice. Yeah. No, being a hater, I totally can appreciate that. There is something that they used to do, and I understand that we want a good game in the sense of the Super Bowl. And not just, I mean, by the gameplay. I mean, by the atmosphere, the weather. And so for our generation, we got to see where they pretty much did Florida, California. I'm really hopeful that they'll bring it back to go everywhere again. I know that they've been trying to put it in different stadiums like Atlanta, Vegas, and stuff like that. But I really think every fan base deserves to at least host a Super Bowl, whether their team's going to be in it or not. Are you of that same opinion, Bunker? And if so, what city would you like them to see to go to first?
I like the idea of going different places for sure. But I think now that the draft has started doing that, like maybe some of those cities get to scratch that itch that they wouldn't otherwise get Super Bowl wise. Like, I don't want the Super Bowl to be a bad weather game. Like as much fun as it is to watch games in Buffalo or wherever and they have snow and all that, like that's fun because that's that team, that fan base region and all that. Like, I don't want the Super Bowl to be we had one in New York a couple years back. I think was when the Seahawks beat the Broncos was a bad weather game. And whatever, Seahawks won, so I'm happy about that. But like it was definitely impacted some of the way the game was played. So I don't know. Give me destination cities that either have domes or good weather. And honestly, if they just wanted to do like New Orleans, Vegas, bounce back and forth,
nonstop forever,
that's fine. Like, that's fine. I covered a couple of them in bad cities. Like, I covered the Detroit Super Bowl when the Seahawks played the Steelers. Never again. This is not going to be video. People can't see that. Thumbs down. Like, don't have big events in Detroit. Detroit's a fine city. I went to a wedding there. It was a good time. We don't need to be having Super Bowls in Detroit.
Okay.
I covered the Super Bowl in Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix, all right. There's a million cities like Phoenix. We don't need a Super Bowl there. Let's have it places where people can do stuff that they can't do, like prostitution, gambling, sunshine, drugs, maybe. I don't know. Like, those are the cities that need to have people.
Something I never thought I would hear out of Andy Bunker's mouth. I want to go where there's the most prostitution, the gambling, all the degenerate behaviors, and a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Give it all to me. Do you think that's going to help?
Go to those Super Bowls anyway. Like, they all fly. All the strippers fly in, no matter. We just have it where they don't have to fly. Save them the trip.
I think you're hoping that the Seahawks get to play anybody, and they're like the Raiders, and the Raiders are just going to party all the night before with the prostitutes, and then they're going to win, right?
Sure, yeah. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes. I like it. So we've got these two teams who arguably have very dedicated fan bases. You've got the Kansas City Chiefs, who are originally the Dallas Texans, and they ended up moving up to Kansas City right before the merger, and had, have basically put roots down in Kansas City, and really have a very solid fan base that is more regional than anything else. Then you've got the Philadelphia fans, who I've always said that they are a very small fan base, but they're arguably one of the most prideful fan bases that are out there, one of the most dedicated fan bases that are out there. Kind of compare these two fan bases for me as an observer, and just how do you think these two fan bases assist the teams overall?
That's a great question. They are definitely two passionate fan bases. I mean, the best advantage that Kansas City tends to have is home games because it's just so damn loud. Obviously that's not going to be the case in the Super Bowl. Now the fans will travel and I'm sure they'll yell, but that Arrowhead decibel level is a real thing. So the fact that they've had 5 consecutive AFC Championship games there is that's a real deal. Philly fans are crazy. Like everybody knows that. Like they're nuts. Like they're a different breed of human. Honestly, I mean, there's like Philly fans, maybe Buffalo fans are kind of, you'd maybe go see them in a zoo somewhere. Boston fans, but I think Boston fans are kind of getting soft and like cute now. Like they used to be like hardcore, but now it's like, I don't know. Like Tom Brady rubbed off on them and everyone's on like keto diet or something. So I'm not impressed by Patriots fans the way that I used to be. Like I don't know, like everyone wears Brooks Brothers to the game and stuff. But like I think the Eagles fans and the Chiefs fans are definitely both great fan bases for sure. I had never thought about the fact that the Eagles fan base may be like a smaller group. And when you say it like that, it makes sense. I've never met an Eagles fan. Like you ever just meet an Eagles fan out?
Yeah.
I've met Kansas fans every once in a while, but like you just don't like bump into. I guess I mean I worked with Hugh Douglas for years, and he's obviously an Eagles fan, an Eagles legend. But like it's just like walk down the street and bump into Eagles fans. But I see KC fans every once in a while.
Jake and I have gone to high school and grade school with an Eagles fan, and
Butt Gizzard.
Butt Gizzard, we will call him specifically for this show. But he's mouthy when the football season's around. He doesn't really talk.
He's an Eagles fan. He's the epitome of a fucking Eagles fan.
And I know a couple others that they're just willing to shit on you when you're down and just go from there. I see, living in Northern Nevada, I feel like the 49ers fans are the closest fans to the Eagles fans to me, and it's for a different reason. The Eagles fans are just like, they'll throw batteries at Santa Claus. They're just terrible humans, right? But 49ers fans, what really drives me nuts with them is that they'll be quiet for years, and all of a sudden the team does good one year, and they are the loudest fan base that they will try to be ever. So yeah, definitely hate those fan bases. But Kansas City, I don't see Kansas City as an unlikable fan base. They seem very down to earth. They seem kind of homegrown, very much like I said, like a regional fan base. You really have them over the course of maybe 2 or 4 states, and that's where they're generated. And but I see the dedication there, and of course with Mahomes, how can you not cheer for Mahomes as a football player? Outside of it, his family, his brother specifically, maybe even his wife. I get there's questions there, but for Mahomes, I mean, he's just a fluffy headed Kermit the Frog, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And also, like Kansas City, this is not always the best way to judge a fan base, but sometimes we do this, like the celebrity fans that they have. Like the Kansas City Chiefs celebrity fans are Paul Rudd and Jason Sudeikis. Like, who's more likable than those guys? Everybody likes them.
Yeah. Yeah, you've got Ant-Man and you've got Ted Lasso.
Yeah, Ted Lasso and Ant-Man. Like, can you think of a more likable duo of people that could represent your fan base? Plus, like, is Kansas City, is that Midwest? What is that even?
Yeah.
Is it,
well, they call it Midwest, but
yeah,
I mean, is it?
Midwest people are nice. They're all friendly,
Yeah.
See, I think they're going to travel better. I think they're going to travel better to the Super Bowl, and it's because I agree with you. I can remember every Eagles fan I met. The funny thing is because one, I can count them all on one hand, but 2, they're the loudest people whenever I meet them. Fly Eagles Fly is ingrained in my brain this year from them. But I'll say this, Bunker, what is the worst fan base in your opinion countrywide for a football team? And I want to know this from you. Like, what do you think is the epitome of a cesspool fan base in this country?
Whew. Wow, that's a great question. Oh, man. They're all terrible. I mean, like, every fan base has people in it that are awful. God, I mean, there's so many bad Seahawks fans. I love the Seahawks, but especially like the last 10 years too, you know what I mean? Like the 12s that have developed that didn't care about the team before Russell Wilson, but then turned on him, I guess. but also turned on Pete Carroll. Like, not living there for the last decade has been really interesting as a Seahawks fan because I haven't had to deal with all that bullshit. But like being on Twitter a little bit and just observing, like, wait a minute, who are you guys mad at? Like, Sierra? Like, you're blaming, okay, but now Russell Wilson's gone. So I guess Pete Carroll is a good coach, but you're going to act like you didn't like when Russell Wilson was the quarterback for 10 years because it was the best decade in the history of the franchise, and they did win a Super Bowl. I don't know. Seahawks fans are terrible. There's a lot of awful Falcons fans, I'll be honest. But also I can't blame Falcons fans because they've just been dragged through the mud and had very little reward for their time. Like most other fan bases, at least you've gotten a cookie every once in a while. Like
unless
Falcons
you're a Cowboys fan.
But like of a certain age, right? Like you had a great childhood,
right?
Least,
right.
Like Falcons fans was shitty, really shitty back then. Like it was horrible in the 80s. And then, like, at least Vic was cool, but then it was the worst thing ever. He got arrested. He went to prison, you know? Mm-hmm. And then, like, they're awesome, and Matt Ryan takes the Super Bowl, and then the worst loss ever in Super Bowl history. God, I don't know. I mean, we could go fan base by fan base and talk about how awful everyone is. Eagles fans, obviously, there's a lot of horrible behavior in that fan base.
I mean, I was kind of slightly rooting for, and I say this because I was never really vocal about it, for an Eagles-Bills Super Bowl, just because I was curious exactly how much damage was going to be done in Glendale.
Yeah.
You know, like obviously people are going to be thrown through tables, but what exactly happens with protests? How many fist fights do you see? You know, it's just some drunken AEW slap fest that I was just ready for. Like that was the game after the game, right? Like no matter who lost, you knew that you were going to go out and see some sort of like drunken UFC match, like hillbillies on ice. It was going to be phenomenal.
I wanted to, because if the Bills and the Chiefs would have made the AFC Championship game, it was going to be in Atlanta. It was going to be a neutral site here at Mercedes-Benz. I was going to go buy up all the tables from Home Depot and just charge them.
Just sell them in the back of a truck at a stadium.
Run the collapsible table grid.
That would have been great. That would have been great. Well, so we're here for the big game. So I'm going to put you on the spot. We obviously have the matchups between the Chiefs and the Eagles. What is your Super Bowl prediction, and also give me a score?
I think it's going to be a great game. The score probably high 20s, low 30s, maybe like a 31-27, something like that. But I got the Eagles. I just think they can do so much offensively. They're so versatile. Like if you shut down the run game, which is almost impossible to do, Jalen Hurts has been really good, and you get the ball out quick. You know, he's got weapons to throw the ball to. Devontae Smith's a great deep threat. You know, they have kind of everything you want offensively, and their offensive line is healthier than it's been, and they're playing really good. And we talked about it earlier. Like their defensive line's just stupid. I mean, they got 8 guys that can get to the quarterback, and they just rotate them in, and they just get after you over. They had 75 sacks in 18 games. You know, if you add their first playoff game in their regular season, that's the most sacks anybody's had in an 18-game stretch since the 85 Bears. That's a pretty good squad, to be compared to. I just think they're too talented. I think that, with what their front office has done, put together the depth of that roster. Like, I just think as good as Patrick Mahomes is, and I think, he's going to make plays and they're going to score points. The Eagles just are too good. It just, they put together what seems like a perfect team. And I think they get, again, a great game, but I think they get them something like 31-27, 30-28, something like that. But it'll be a good one.
All right. Well, Bunker, thanks for your time today, and we'll bring you back for our little roundtable. In the meantime, we are going to hear from our show sponsor, Jerky Pro, and we'll be right back. Bleach Bros Podcast is proud to align itself with Jerky Pro, a beef jerky manufacturer established by military and paramilitary veterans.
Available in 3-ounce or 1-pound bags with great flavors such as honey glazed, teriyaki, red hot, apple cinnamon, original, peppered, sweet barbecue, and if you're ballsy enough, nuclear.
Be sure to use our promo code to get some of the best jerky on the market. Use Bleach Bros 5, all lowercase, to take advantage of this offer today.
Welcome back to the show. And now, the inaugural Gridiron Hippo Awards.
Well, Jake, we didn't do too bad for our second annual Super Bowl preview show here. We had one hell of a lineup of guests. Our panelists did such a phenomenal job. But we're actually going to introduce our inaugural Gridiron Hippo Awards this year. You kind of want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, round table with all the guests we've had today. Thank you, guys. We are going to be giving out the MVP, Coach of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, GM, and then the Rookies of the Year on both sides of the ball. And I agree with you, B-Word. We did a great job. Just like the winning team, I did the best. I get the MVP award, of course. And with that, I want to start with you, because this is inaugural, and this was your idea for the Salty Hippos out there. The Hippo Awards, which is a great fucking idea. Who is your MVP, B-Word, and why?
So that's a great question, and I'm going to interrupt that question and say, you are the MVP, Jake, but I am, of course, the GM. I coordinated all of this. I made sure that we drafted a good amount of panelists. I made sure that we had such a great talking subjects that we were doing. And so now that I can't talk my MVP for the year, I honestly, man, I think I got to give it to Patrick Mahomes, dude. He is arguably the best quarterback. Let me change that. He is inarguably the best quarterback in the NFL. He is phenomenal. I don't think that the Chiefs would be nearly as successful without Mahomes. Prior to Mahomes, the Chiefs have not had success at the position, and honestly, without Mahomes, I don't think the Chiefs would have nearly as much success. So my MVP is Patrick Mahomes. Who do you have, my man?
People are going to hate me for this. I am picking Kelsey.
Which one?
And here's why. The tight end. So for the Chiefs, is it Thomas Kelsey? What's his first name? Travis. Yeah, sure. Travis Kelsey. I don't know his first name. I just look at the last name of his jersey. One, he has paid me out handsomely this year in the degenerate pool. But the reason he's my MVP is because I look at it this way with the awards, and everybody can hate on me here if they want. But the Offensive Player of the Year is for the year, the season. The MVP is for overall, and that's how I look at it. And I actually think he's going to win the MVP if Kansas City can pull out the win. So for me, he is the MVP because I think he got through the postseason, everything. He has performed to make sure they can make it to the next game. And that's my pick. And you can shit on all you want, B-Word, but it's not a bad player. It's not like I'm picking like Gardner Minshew, who's a fucking like second string guy. Okay, just because he has a killer mustache. But I think honestly, after we see the game played, even though I've given it away, I think the Eagles are going to win. If the Chiefs can by chance do it, he's going to be the reason why.
Well, I think that, you know what, man, Travis Kelce is such an all-star at his position. I can't argue with you there. Let's switch it up, man. Let's go with Coach of the Year. Who do you have for Coach of the Year?
So Coach of the Year for me is Doug Peterson from the Jags.
Good choice.
It's one of those things. He just did, for what he did for that franchise turning around, he was just fun to watch. But I think in all sides of the ball, he had great management skills. And that's clock management, that's time management, that's making sure the right personnel was in there, going for it when they needed to. Also having the balls to go for it and not care what the fan bases thought if you fucking lost. Because, I mean, I'm sick of these arguments of he shouldn't go for it on 4th and 1, or he should only go for it on 4th and 1. It's like, just let him call the game. He knows his players. He knows the momentum. He knows how it's going. And out of all the coaches this year, he impressed me the most with that. I mean, he picked my favorite to win the South, the Houston Texans, of course, because if you remember my shithead pick at the beginning of the season, I rolled the dice with that one, and he really fucking proved me wrong.
I do think he's done a phenomenal job down there in Florida, and I just think that he did such a good job with that quarterback down there too. But speaking about a coach doing a good job with quarterbacks, my Coach of the Year is Kyle Shanahan, and the reason for that is that, you know, ironically, he was on his third quarterback going into the playoffs, and they were still performing very well at a very high level. That tells me a couple things. Number one, their offense is very simplistic for the players, and as the offensive coach, he does a good job with that. But number two, just being able to make sure his players are ready. And it wasn't until they had the fourth string guy come in after an injury to Brock Purdy, it really stopped the momentum for the 49ers to be able to win that game against the Eagles. And I think all things considered, if both teams were healthy, I would have really loved to see the slugfest that I think it would have been. But for that reason, I'm going Kyle Shanahan.
That's not a bad pick. I agree with that pick. I can't argue it. I feel because he made it through, but also I look at it as though too, if you have to go down to a 4th-string quarterback, sometimes it's on the players more than the coach, because I mean, you're just throwing the guy out there because you have no choice. It's not that he thought, right, this is going to work. With that, let's move straight into GM. And the reason is, We know who we've named the best player. We've named the best coach. Who was the guy behind the scenes, like you were, for this show, making the best team possible out there?
Oh, I hate to say this just because it's a Philadelphia Eagle team, but Howie Roseman with the Philadelphia Eagles. This GM did such a great job getting rid of Wentz, picking up some draft capital. You know, you didn't really know what was going to happen with Hurts going into the season, how good he was going to be, if they were going to be able to move on from him. They've got 2 first-round picks going into next year. They had the opportunity to pick up their quarterback that they wanted to. Hurts ended up proving them wrong, or at least initially. We'll see what they do in the offseason. You know, acquisitions that he had prior to the year, acquisitions he had during the year. You know, you've got Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph toward the end of the year that he was able to pick up off the street to really make that defense even more dominant. Howie Roseman, the GM for the Philadelphia Eagles, by far is my pick for the front office GM executive of the year. What about you?
I'm going to make this short and sweet. I agree with you. I fucking hate the Eagles. Howie Roseman gets it. He did a great job. Everything he's done, I think most of us here picked it. And if you said something, I agree with you. I am moving on, though, because I am ashamed to keep talking about it because, as I said, fuck the Eagles.
I'm good with that. So, Jake, let's ask who's your offensive player of the year?
Offensive player of the year is actually, it's funny. I'm going with Justin Jefferson, just like our buddy Bunker over there. The degenerate in me loves it because he helped line my pockets again, so I'm a big fan of that. But 2, just because I think he did more than they expected. And he almost he was coming close to setting the yards for the year for a receiver. That's nothing to be shy of.
Right.
Like, that's nothing to, like, shake your head at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he did a great job. You know, I know it's easy to say Hurts or Mahomes because they're making it to the Super Bowl and stuff, but if I had to look at a player that was on the offensive side who changed the season for people's, because I think the Vikings were a farce and it got proven, was Justin Jefferson, though, because game in and game out, he was the guy on the field making sure a play fucking happened. What about you?
That's not a bad pick. For me, my offensive player of the year is going to match my MVP pick. I think I've got to go with the best quarterback of the league, Patrick Mahomes, for all the reasons that I said that he's MVP. Very easy to transition into offensive player of the year in addition to my MVP pick. So that's kind of where I'm going with that.
So with that, let's just go to the other side of the ball then. Defensive player of the year. And I think, because we've had a few that are the same. I think a lot of people at this round table have had a few that are the same. I think this one was pretty easy for most people. But who was your defensive player of the year?
Man, honestly, I think I got to go with Nick Bosa on the 49ers. To me, this is a position that comes to stats, right? Defensive player of the year. There's a lot that you're not able to see, such as leadership qualities, such as how one person's play affects the stats of another person. Nick Bosa, obviously the leader in sacks for the year. I've got to give it to him. He's dominant. He's great against the run. He's great against the pass. I do think that there are some honorable mentions that I can throw in here, but ultimately I got to go with Bosa for the 49ers. What about you?
Again, we agree, but here's the thing that I'm going to throw out there to people. I'm also picking Bosa for him trolling Eagles fans at the game when he got hammered and yelling out how he's a millionaire and has a house and whatever else he did. That's also good defense, defending your team and defending in the stands and defending yourself. So you know what? He's a defender on and off the field. He is my guy for the year. Fuck yes, Bosa. Get those Eagle fans. Get your mouth running. I love it because I'm sure he's running on the field just the same as he was jawing off the field. So Bosa is the defensive player of the year.
I like it. So let's highlight some of these rookies that were on the come this year. Offensive rookie of the year. I'm just going to go ahead and state mine. I've got Kenneth Walker III off of the Seattle Seahawks. He's their running back. He was dynamic, really turned it on toward the end of the year. I don't think that the Seahawks would have nearly had as much success if they were unable to run the ball, and he was very capable of doing that. I think that he's proven to be a monster toting the rock for the next few years, and so that's my offensive rookie of the year. What about you?
Garrett Wilson. This one was easy for me. Not that I watched a lot of Jet games, but it was one of those things you can look at the stats and see the highlights. 83 receptions, a little over 1,100 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That is not bad for a rookie coming in, especially with essentially a no-name quarterback unless he's banging your mom at the Jets. So, I mean, that guy, to me, outstood everybody else. Not that there wasn't good ones out there, but not just because he had the most yards. It's just the fact that what he was playing with on his team to make this happen and being in a lot of games where it almost didn't matter but still performing was important to me.
Our final award, Jake, is Defensive Player of the Year. Who do you have for that position?
Aiden Hutchinson from Detroit. I honestly think this guy just came out and showed, 9.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 52 tackles. That is not bad, especially when you're jumping in the shoes at a Detroit team that did better than we thought. The Silver Kitties actually did pretty well. But the last, I think, big guy at Detroit that you ever expected to do anything was Ndamukong Suh, and I don't think we ever saw, and I'm not saying he's on the same level as him, but I don't think we thought somebody else would come in and do his, almost fill those shoes, even though he's been gone a while. And I think this guy did that. What about you?
I think that that's a great pick, man. I've got to be like the vast majority of America, I think, and go for Sauce Gardner, New York Jets. Man, you want to talk about being on an island as a rookie. This guy was dynamic. This guy didn't play like a rookie at all. I mean, I kind of hope he doesn't hit that second year wall that they talk about, coming in. I really feel like this guy can be the best cornerback in the NFL for years to come. And, so Sauce Gardner's definitely it for me. Before we bring our panelists in, let's get our official picks for the team. You've already teased yours a few times. But obviously we've got Kansas City Chiefs, we've got Philadelphia Eagles. Who's going to win, and give me a score?
I have the Eagles, and I have the Eagles winning 30-24. I have also been so confident in this, I put a bet on it. It's paying plus 3,300, just for anybody out there that's a degenerate like me listening. You want to Sprague that line. Pat and Penny, I know Sprague, but I had to borrow it. I will say this. I think the game is going to be high scoring. I think the game is going to be fun. I do think that the Eagles edge it out, and that's because of both front lines on the ball. And I just see them scoring a few more points. I honestly think this is going to come down to a field goal and a mess up from one offense. And I think Mahomes is going to be the guy that messes up because he's going to have him in his face the whole damn game that eventually something's going to go wrong.
Honestly, we're sitting here making picks, and I'm going to make a pick that's painful. I'm going to pick the Eagles as well, I hope, and I'm going to be rooting for the Chiefs. But I do think that the Eagles are going to win. Let's call it 27-24. Probably on that last minute boot through the uprights that you're talking about. I do think that this is going to be a defensive match. I do think that it's going to break in the second half. I think we're probably looking at a low scoring game in the first half, probably something like 10-13, somewhere in there, and then from there it just eats up and keeps going. So with that, let's bring in our panelists so that way we can ask them about their picks and then figure out who we're awarding our Gridiron Hippo awards to. So Travis, welcome back to the show. Travis, why don't you go ahead and let us know who your MVP is?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mahomes for my MVP. I mean, he had a career high completion percentage, 40 plus touchdowns, but he had 11, 12 interceptions. And in a year where I think some people were counting the Chiefs out because Tyreek Hill was gone, and now some other teams with, like, obviously the Bengals went to the Super Bowl last year, and the Bills were everybody's favorite at the beginning of the year, mine included. I think the expectation that Patrick Mahomes is just Patrick Mahomes, I think people kind of forgot just how good he is, and he definitely proved that to us this year. He's my MVP.
That's not a bad pick, Travis. I think it's writing up chalk, but I'll give it to you. So, Tommy, then who is your MVP for the year?
I kind of hate to say it, but Jalen Hurts. I think he's overcome a lot of adversity with he's kind of been shit on since college. And the things he did with that Eagles team is outstanding. And I hate to say it, especially after the dismantling of my team, but for overall MVP, I think he's the guy.
Tommy, not a terrible pick. Let's go over to Josh. Josh, who's your MVP?
It's got to be Patrick Mahomes. I know that Jalen Hurts will be a trendy pick, but I don't think the Chiefs go anywhere without Mahomes. And I know that the MVP is kind of a regular season award, but just how gutsy he's played down the stretch has proved how valuable he is to the team. So definitely Mahomes.
And Josh coming through like everybody else. So Bunker, it's over to you. Don't piss off any fan bases. We know you love them. Who's your MVP for the year?
Patrick Mahomes, because it doesn't matter if he's hurt. It doesn't matter if you take away his best wide receiver. It doesn't matter. They're just going to be in the AFC Championship game every single year. He's going to throw 40 touchdowns, and the offense actually got more efficient somehow without Tyreek Hill. So, he's the best. He's one of the best ever. I know he's still young. He's in his prime, so we're witnessing it. But I mean, he could be the MVP every year for the next 5 years, probably.
All right, J-Rob, round us out. Who's your MVP?
My MVP is Patrick Mahomes. I mean, most yards ever by a quarterback. He led the NFL with first downs on early downs at 277. Minnesota was second with 244. That's 33 more. The same gap in first downs from Minnesota to the 18th ranked team is the same gap that Minnesota and Patrick Mahomes have from first to second. He just is absolutely the one biggest difference maker for any team. He's the MVP.
All right, so let's just go back. Let's just go backwards. J-Rob, who do you got for Coach of the Year?
Coach of the Year, I got to go Brian Daboll. The one guy that absolutely made the most out of what he had, I feel like, was him, and did so in so many different facets that in a tough year it was close, but he's got to be the guy I pick.
I love the size of this table. I like that pick. I almost feel like we're the Knights at the Round Table right now. So then, Travis, let's just go over your way. Who's the Coach of the Year and why?
So for Coach of the Year, I really, really wanted to go home for this one and pick Brian Daboll. I mean, the Giants were supposed to be terrible. I had no expectations for the Giants. I still don't have terribly high expectations for Daniel Jones, but they proved a lot of people wrong. I'm a Giants fan, and they proved me wrong. The fact that they won 9 games and won a playoff game. I mean, I don't think anybody had that. So you could look at a Giants team that hasn't won a playoff game since they won a Super Bowl and say, wow, I mean, that really surprised everybody, and they did. But is that the best coaching job done this season? And I don't think it is. I think it's Nick Sirianni. As much as I hate to give any Eagle credit for anything, to have that team that was, a 9-win, one-and-done playoff team last year be the best team in the NFC and obviously represent the conference in the Super Bowl with an MVP candidate quarterback and an improved defense, I don't think anybody had them going 14-3. I'd have to pick Nick Sirianni as much as I want to kill myself for it.
Not too bad, man. Honestly, that's a really good pick. Josh, what about you?
Obviously, it's Doug Peterson. He's done an amazing job with the Jags. There may be a little bias there with my fandom. I think the only other two that are in the mix are Nick Sirianni and Brian Daboll, but it's definitely Peterson.
Okay, I can see it. I'm gonna go. I was hoping you were going the home guy like me, but I'm gonna throw it over to Tommy for you for Coach of the Year, just because I want to make Bunker go last.
I'm gonna go kind of outside the box a little bit. Pete Carroll. I think that guy did more with less than any other team. And it's easy to go with, teams that made a strong run in the playoffs. But for him to take that squad, and everybody thought, it's the chicken, not the egg, or however you want to phrase that. They thought when Russell was gone, it was all downhill. But what he did with that Seahawks team, I think, warrants that accolade right there.
All right, Bunker, now to you, Coach of the Year.
This is a tough one. There's a lot of really good options. I'm going to go Brian Daboll just because there was no expectations. Like, Daniel Jones was, going to be moved on from, and they were picked to win, probably 5, 6, 7 games by most sports books before the season. And they're in the playoffs and they won a game. So that's incredible. Again, I know there's a lot of really good options and all that, but that football team hadn't been above 500 in 5 years, not once. They weren't 1-0, they weren't 2-1, they weren't above 500 one time for 5 years, and he got them to the playoffs and won a game. So, pretty impressive.
That's a good pick, Bunker. So, guys, just like I did to B-Word, since we're already talking about the office, let's just go with GM. Start with you, Travis. Who do you got for GM of the year?
Yeah, however you want to word it, GM, front office, executive of the year. Again, I have to go someplace that pains me to do this, but I'm going to give it to Howie Roseman. Again, for the same reasons that I gave it to Nick Sirianni. You look at what he did in the offseason and going out and bringing in Hassan Reddick, who had 16 sacks this year. The gutsy trade to go, and it is gutsy to go trade a first-round pick for A.J. Brown, because a lot of times when you go bring in a big receiver for a first-round pick and then pay him $100 million. A lot of time those guys don't pan out. We've seen the Eagles do that a number of times, and it just doesn't work. But it worked. Bringing back Fletcher Cox, bringing back Jason Kelce, everything that Howie Roseman did this year, it obviously worked. And he had faith in Jalen Hurts when a lot of people didn't. When they drafted him in the second round, I think some people were pretty frustrated and confused by that. And then he comes in, and he wasn't great to start, but they said, no, we believe in this dude, and it was obviously the right call. So, I got to go Eagles again with Howie Roseman.
I may be biased, but I like that pick. Let's shoot it over to Bunker. Bunker, what about you?
I got to go with the Eagles. Howie Roseman, you just don't see defensive lines in the NFL 8 deep. They look like Georgia. And I guess a couple of guys they have are from Georgia, but they rotate like they're a college football team, or they're like an NFL line change. Guys get tired, they just switch them out. They lost a game and they went out and got Ndamukong Suh. They're like, never again. We'll never lose another game. So yeah, they made the trade for AJ Brown. Everything they did the last calendar year was a touch of gold.
I feel like no matter who I ask next is going to come up with the same answer as either me or everybody else on this damn panel. Josh, who do you got?
I think it's still Brandon Beane from the Buffalo Bills. I think even though the Bills came up short, I liked what he had to say about them never wanting to be bad enough to get a player like Jamar Chase. And I think it's incredible that he's been able to get them to a point where they're funding a new stadium. I didn't think that was ever going to happen in Buffalo, so I think he's the leader.
Well, he definitely didn't pick the same as we did. So what about you, Tommy? What do you got?
That was a tough one, but I'm just going to be the homer and say John Lynch. Even though it was more out of necessity and no trade offers for Jimmy G, but the contract that they signed with him, keeping him a more than qualified backup quarterback for the role in case Trey got hurt, which he did, panned out. And then unforeseen, which I think any Niner fans saw him getting hurt, got hurt. He drafted Mr. Irrelevant. And at the time, I hated it because, Brock Purdy, who cares? As a Pack fan here from Nevada, I wanted Carson Strong. Carson Strong checks all the boxes that Purdy does. He has the NFL arm, the accuracy, but he had the knee problems. That's why he's not playing, in my opinion. So I know he didn't see Purdy being Purdy, but I'm gonna give it to him.
And again, to round it out at the end, J-Rob, the king of X's and O's, who's the GM of the year?
Hands down, Howie Roseman. Simple as this. This man in August signed 3 free agents that ended up being all pros. Done. And then this is not even talking about AJ Brown as a trade on draft day. So.
All right, guys, let's go meat and potatoes. Let's go right to Offensive Player of the Year. Demers, who do you have?
Well, if Patrick Mahomes is my MVP, why would I pick anybody else to be my Offensive Player of the Year? I never understood that. It's like, okay, this guy's our MVP. You see that in college. This dude won the Heisman Trophy, but he wasn't good enough to win the Davey O'Brien Award as the best quarterback. But yet a quarterback won the Heisman Trophy. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. He's either the best offensive player and the MVP, or he's neither.
I can see that. So, J-Rob, then who do you got? I want to hear a little bit of an argument against this. Maybe it's different.
Offensive Player of the Year is Justin Jefferson. He had 80 first downs this year. Mike Evans, Jalen Waddle, Brandon Ayuk, Terry McLaurin, all productive receivers. They had less than 80 catches. Justin Jefferson had that many first downs. He changed the way defenses played Minnesota simply because of how good he was.
All right, Josh. Give us some fantasy. What do you got?
The Jet, Justin Jefferson.
Bunky Pants, give me something else to hear at this table.
I'm going Justin Jefferson on that one. The dude got 2,000 yards passing from Kirk Cousins. I don't know what else to say about that performance. Freaking awesome. Everyone knew Jamar Chase was going to be a stud in the NFL. Everyone kind of thought, Jefferson was maybe just a product of that system, and no, he's awesome too. So anybody who can have a year like that and Kirk Cousins is their quarterback deserves every award you can get.
All right, Tommy, set us straight. Who do you got?
I might, again, pull the homer card and go with McCaffrey. I don't want to say mediocre in Carolina. And it's weird that they really did addition with subtraction. They got rid of him, and I feel that they improved. But what he did to the 49ers offense and the way he assimilated, like, he looked like he's been there for 5 years. And they don't win those games, those 12 games in a row, without him performing the way it is. So I'm going to go with CMC.
So defensive player. Tommy, let's start with you this time. Who do you have for defensive player of the year?
This is pandering to the home team right here. I'm going to go with Micah Parsons because, again, they were in a lot of games that maybe they shouldn't have because of him, because of the uphill struggles of having Dak and feeding Zeke too many times, that they kept them in games and they helped them win games. And I think he's the catalyst for that.
Good pick on the other side of the ball. Bunker, who do you got?
Nick Bosa. There's a lot of options for that one, but I had an opportunity to watch a lot of San Francisco 49ers games this year for whatever reason. I mean, they were on national TV quite a bit. But then they just kind of sought them out as well because they're just fun to watch. You just watch that dude play every single play. He's going 100 miles an hour. He could wreck a game on any play. He missed a couple games early in the season too, and they were a total disaster. And then he came back, and they were the best defense in football. So, yeah, I got to go Nick Bosa.
Not too shabby. J-Rob, how about you?
Defensive player of the year for me, it's a shocker, I think, to a lot of people. I got Chris Jones. Chris Jones, defensive player of the year. He had the second most pass rush snaps in the NFL, fifth most pressures, 15.5 sacks, which is fourth in the NFL, 17 tackles for losses, seventh in the NFL. He had the seventh best pass rush win rate in the NFL, and he did all of this while being double teamed more than anybody else in the entire league.
And Demers, so you don't feel bad and you're not going last, who's the defensive player of the year?
I mean, Nick Bosa, to me, is the defensive player of the year. There are a couple of other guys that you can put in that category. I think you could definitely put Micah Parsons up there. But, I mean, I'm not going to put a Cowboy anywhere unless it's 8-8. So I can't do that, but I don't think he's worthy of it anyway. He's close. He had a great season. I was pretty upset when the Giants didn't draft him a couple of years ago. I loved him coming out of Penn State. But I'd give it to Bosa. You got to put Jones up in there too from Kansas City. But I would go with Nick Bosa. He just had such a dominant year.
I like how we just left Appleboys Josh just for the end. So, Josh, round us up here.
You're going to love this one, B-word. It's Micah Parsons, no question.
So since we're on the defense, guys, let's just go to Defensive Rookie of the Year. Somebody that might be overlooked most of the time because I think we focus on the offensive side of the ball. So, Josh, since we just finished with you, let's start with you. Who is the Defensive Rookie of the Year and why?
So the trendy pick and what I think everybody else in the room is going to go with is Sauce Gardner, but I think Aiden Hutchinson has got the award. He did some incredible things for the Lions this year.
All right, what about you, Tommy?
Adrian Hutchinson for the Lions. I think the Lions are beyond an up-and-coming team. The way for the last 2 years, they've fought tooth and nail, and the addition of him this year kind of sets them over the top. I think their defense was a little overshadowed because offensively they were a juggernaut for the first 5-6 games. They were, the top 3 scoring offense for the first 8-9 games. As they started to decline, that defense started to get a little bit better, and I think he's one of the guys that leads the way there.
Well, Bunker, throw it over to you. Who's the Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Let me go home team biased and pick Tariq Woolen. 5th-round draft pick. No one saw that coming. Maybe they, lightning in a bottle again, Richard Sherman style, 5th-rounder who played wide receiver in college and comes in and just was awesome. So I'll go Tariq Woolen with the Seahawks homer pick.
I know Demers doesn't like to be last, but I'm going to make him last. So, J-Rob, how about you?
Oh, hands down, Sauce Gardner, New York Jets cornerback. 73, what was he? He was targeted 73 times, which is 55th in the NFL. Still was second in the NFL in pass breakups. The lowest completion percentage against him amongst all other corners who had as many targets and snaps as he did. Hands down, Sauce Gardner. Dude is one of the best corners, even as a rookie.
And that leaves you, Demers, Defensive Rookie of the Year. Round this out.
For Defensive Rookie of the Year, I mean, this is a runaway, isn't it? It's Sauce by a mile. I mean, number one, his name is Sauce. Like that alone should be enough to give him Rookie of the Year, but he was so dominant. I mean, this dude's going to be the best cover corner in the league. I know he didn't lead the league in interceptions this year, but he led the league in passes defended. Nobody wanted to throw his way. I mean, it's got to be Sauce, right? There's nobody else on there.
All right, final pick. We've got Offensive Rookie of the Year. Demers, you want to finish this up?
Offensive Rookie of the Year. So this is debatable, right? Because do you have to play a full season to be the offensive rookie of the year? I think you could look at Garrett Wilson with the Jets, Walker with the Seahawks. So he kind of came on later in the year. When your quarterback comes in as your third string quarterback, never played in the league before, and goes undefeated and takes you to the NFC Championship game when nobody knew his name this time last year, you got to give it to Brock Purdy. I mean, there really wasn't anybody else that was just so good offensively that, you can justify giving it to anybody else. When your quarterback, who is your last option at that position, doesn't lose a game for you as a rookie, he's got to be your rookie of the year.
I like that pick. Josh, who do you got?
Offensive rookie of the year was probably the hardest for me to pick, but Garrett Wilson from the Jets is my pick.
I don't know that I can necessarily call you Bunky Pants because this is our first time of meeting each other, but Bunker, who do you have?
Yeah, all right. We'll give it to Garrett Wilson. He had to catch passes from fucking Zach Wilson. And he still was incredible. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Pick your poison. Ohio State wide receivers, I guess. Sure. Yeah, we'll go with Garrett Wilson. That guy's awesome.
My man, Tommy Thomson. Who is your offensive rookie of the year?
That one, a little more difficult, but I don't think the Jets would have been anywhere what they are without that receiving core. I mean, Zach Wilson, in my opinion, has a huge uphill battle, but I'm definitely going to go with Garrett Wilson on that one.
And rounding it up with our man who's the expert of the X's and O's, J-Rob, what do you got?
Chris Olave. And one particular reason why with him, besides all the polish, he can run every single thing on the route tree. Of all rookies since 2012, there are only 4 rookies who have had more yards per route run as a rookie than Chris Olave. That company is OBJ, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. That's it. 5th all-time yards per route run as a rookie.
Well, I just want to thank all the panelists for taking part in our 2nd annual Super Bowl preview show. Thanks to Travis Demers. Thanks to Andy Bunker. Thanks again to Josh from the Appleboys Podcast, Tommy Thompson, J-Rob from the Cover Zero Podcast.
Cover-O.
Make sure to check these guys out. With that, Jake, one hell of a year, one hell of a podcast episode. I'm loving this. Let's do it again next year.
Hell yeah, and thanks for all the dirty talk, and come back, get sanitized. Eagles money line, baby.
Go Chiefs.
Thank you for listening to the 2023 Bleach Bros Podcast Super Bowl Preview Show. For more Bleach Bros content, follow them on social media at Bleach Bros Pod and visit their website at bleachbros.com. Bleach Bros Podcast is a Spreaker Prime podcast.